8 o'clock on July 9. I'm going to call the Committee of the Whole to order this morning. This should be an interesting meeting going ahead. It's always interesting to see how we get to spend a lot of money and how we have to make a lot of money go a long ways. And so that's part of our objective this morning. We're going to begin with a roll call, and everyone is here. The ones who are not here, Supervisor Shirley Carter is joining us via Zoom, and Dan Hansen, Supervisor Hansen, has been excused. He had another something else that he had to do today. So we're going to consider the roll call. Everyone is here. You had an opportunity to look at the minutes of our last meeting, the May 5 meeting. Does anyone have any corrections, anything that needs to be changed, any questions on them? Any questions? If not, I will declare them as they are written. Now, there is no public comment here. I see all of the people who are here are employees or supervisors, and so I will not even call for a public comment. This morning, we're going to move right into the business part of our meeting. If you notice, there are 5 different things on the agenda. All of them have to do with money, debt funding, and then some 3 very important ways of spending our money we have to decide on, we have to consider: the jail expansion, the emergency communications infrastructure, and then the capital projects. I know that Administrator Ken is going to take a lot of this, although he has passed them on to others. And for those of you who are new, Ken is going to introduce some high technology that most of us are not used to. So I would advise everyone who has a cell phone that's turned on to shut it off, everyone that has a computer that is turned on to shut them off, because sometimes this more modern technology can destroy the technology, that old technology of cell phones and computers. So Ken's going to remind us how to use these. Some of us know, some of us don't. With that, Ken, it's all yours.
Sure, a tutorial on the paddle system. It's everyone's favorite meeting every year. So the paddles, when we get to item number 4 and we go through the projects, because there's so many projects to electronically vote, it take a long time. So we have the paddle system that we've developed. So as we go through the items, and Dustin's the one that's going to be going through that, the finance director. At the end of those, he'll call for a vote. So just hold up your paddle, make sure that you're facing it towards the finance director, whichever way that you want to vote on that. He'll do a quick tally, mark that down, and that gives us that sort of straw poll vote then on each item. So if there's an item that is not gaining a lot of support, we can either make a change to that, or we can reevaluate that project. That's what it's for. A lot of projects are very routine. They're going to have unanimous approval. But every once in a while, we do get projects that have a little bit more involved in them. So the first thing that I'm going to do under this first one to sort of paint the big picture for you, what I want to do is talk about what some of your options are. So after we go through the jail and the communications and all the other projects, we'll come back at the end of the meeting, and we'll kind of ask for you to vote then on what direction you're going to give staff to proceed. So first then, let's flip down to, when we look at the 2 big projects that are on here, the jail is $46 million, the communications project is $20 million, so roughly $70 million. Between the 2 of them. The current debt payments that we have are $11 million per year. If you added a $70 million debt, our annual payments would go up to $15 million. So to put that into perspective, how much does that cost our taxpayers? The county levy currently at 2.595 would go up to 287. So that's 27.5 cents. So if you look at on a per $1,000 value or a $400,000 value, if you look at an average household in St. Croix County, that's about $110 per year. So, I mean, it's not an insignificant amount. There is a cost involved to expand the facilities that the county has. So putting it into perspective then, that's what the cost of what we're asking for today. There are some options on the jail. The jail is something that there isn't a crisis today. But the problem is when there is a crisis, the solution is 3 years out. So you have to time crisis with action in order to avoid that crisis. So that's why we're here today talking about this jail project. We've actually been talking about the jail project for several years. We've been planning it. We've seen it coming. It is currently slated for 2027 for construction, which would mean 2029 is when the jail would actually open up for those new inmates to use. So we're trying to time the issues that we see, the trends that we see with that potential crisis with the jail in order to avert that, because it is such a long lead time. But that being said, there isn't a crisis today. We don't know that the crisis is exactly 3 years out. So you do have some flexibility. I just want to be transparent. There is some flexibility that you can do the project in 27, you could do the project in 28, you could do the project in 2030. Those are probably all within a time frame that we would be able to manage. The sheriff will go into some of the benefits of why doing it sooner is better. The other benefit, though, of doing it sooner rather than later is construction cost inflation. So you can save a little bit of money if you look at that debt timing chart. You see the new bond come in, depending on when you bring it in. That number's slightly lower if you delay it by a couple years, but you're probably going to eat that up with the construction inflation. So if you know that you are going to do the jail, there's probably no cheaper time to do it than the present. So when we look at our options then with how we want to do it, option A is just to sort of move ahead as planned. We've been planning this for a number of years. We would do a authorizing resolution in December of 26 for $70 million. We would start the design for both the jail and the communications projects. And then those would wrap up around 2029. The other alternative then that I think you have is a single bond issue with phased constructions. I always like to combine the bond issues. I don't necessarily like to do multiple bond issues just because there's a cost involved in issuing the bonds. It's about $100,000 to $150,000, which out of $70 million is not very much. But I'm kind of cheap that way. So I do like to save that money if I can. So my preference is always to combine projects into a single bond issue. So you could do a single authorization resolution in December of 26 under option B here for the $70 million, but split when the projects would start. So you could start the communications project in 27, start the jail project in 28. We would actually delay the sale of the bonds until 2028. So we're still doing one bond issue, but you're buying a little bit of a delay in that jail project. And that little bit of delay on that chart saves you just a little bit of money then going forward as our current debt stages down. So that's option B. And then option C is more flexibility for the board in that you would approve just a single communications project up front. We would come back a year from now, you would approve the jail project, or some future year, you'd approve the jail project, but they would end up being separate bond issues. And so it's just a matter of when you want to do the projects and how you want to structure that debt to combine with those. And if you notice, I kept saying that, well, you're going to do the communications project in 27. Terry's very convincing. You know, when he gets up and he talks about this communications, he's really going to leave you no other options, but you have to do it, so. Right, Terry? Yeah, see? Shaking his head at me, starting to shiver now. So the big picture then, you know, what is the cost to the taxpayers? $70 million costs the average home $110 a year. So it goes up once, it increases by that amount, and then sort of stays there for the next 20 years. That's that incremental cost on there. It's not continued increase, it's a one-time increase, and that's the new level then. And then what are your options? So really looking at the options, 1 bond issue, 2 bond issues, projects in '27, split the projects. That's what we're going to be asking you. We have all the other projects on here also. Dustin, the finance director, he's going to go through those. They're all important. They've all been vetted heavily by staff, reviewed, recommended, and they're good projects. I don't know that you'll run into anything that you have issues with, but they're all part of our capital improvement plan and all need your approval ultimately at the end of the day. So we'll go through those and make sure that you are comfortable with them. So with that, I think I've completed the first item, giving you the big picture. We'll move on to the second item, and I think I'll call the sheriff up to take that.
Ken, I have one question before you go.
Sure.
Being that we've depleted the penny, can we actually only raise it 27.5 cents, or do we have to go something divisible by 5, 30, or 25?
Yeah, no, we can still use the penny for that, because when you multiply it by $400,000, it's no longer a penny, it's, dollars at that point. At the end of the day, we'll round the pennies off, but. Yep.
Good morning. Thanks for taking the time out of the morning to go through this project, or hear at least the presentation of our jail master plan. Some of you have been through the jail, and as we kind of go through this slide, show a little bit about the jail and the history of it. In 1993, we opened up the current facility downstairs. At the time, there was 131 inmates, but in 2003, we added a Huber section. I'm just going to skip down. This is the current existing jail. You'll see that new Huber area towards the bottom that has 56 on it. In 1993, that wasn't there. So above that line was the existing with the pod, the old Huber area, which at the time was 4 dorms. The SHU, SHU, that's our special housing unit, that did not exist. That was a gymnasium. But there were 3 receiving cells is all we had for intake, and frankly, that's all we currently have for intake. As time had progressed and Huber became more of a thing, we added on to that. The total inmate capacity allowed with the current system is 185. That receiving, we'll kind of talk about that because that'll be a big focal point of the addition. Today with me as well up here is Captain Joe Cormanek. Some of you have met him as well. Brad Hoover, the state jail inspector. Coincidentally, today is our jail inspection day, so he'll be going through the jail as soon as we're done here. But part of this slideshow presentation are his last 3 jail inspection highlights that we discuss as we talk about some of the areas that we hope to expand and improve. When we talk about this jail project, we start with it being an expansion. It's not a new jail. That has been some of the talk of why do we need a new jail? Well, we don't need a new jail. We need to expand the areas that we currently have. And as Administrator Witt said, it's a 3-year project. So when we look at this opening up in 1993, we broke ground in it probably about 1990. So this concept was probably in the late 80s. So you're looking at a concept of housing, type of inmate, separation classification from the 80s, early 90s. Well, that has clearly changed over the years, and you'll see one of the slides in there is the classification, the subclassifications, and some of the challenges that through the years we've had to adapt to always on the receiving end, never on the looking ahead, how do we prepare for housing and proper housing for those individuals. One of the focus areas is also going to be the expansion of the special housing unit, special needs cells, segregation, the different nomenclature that I'll use, all means one thing. It's an area, but it's how it's used. So you'll hear me unfortunately bounce around because my mind will go through what discipline that area is, but it's all one area. And it's going to be for those that have those special needs, whether it's addictions, mental illness, crisis, schizophrenia, depression, self-harm, protection from others, vulnerabilities. That's really going to be the focal point of this expansion and areas that we currently can't utilize for some of those right now. This is our jail expansion concept. And you'll see over here on the right is the current, that's the colorful area. The pink on the bottom, that's the new Huber, 2002. And then everything off to the left is kind of our expansion and what we envision and what we hope for in the future. There's going to be a receiving area. As you can see, the pod here, the existing gray pod, that's going to be on the north side of the building. Currently is on the north side of the building. So we're going to go west with our hopes of adding with a sally port right at the top for jail intake. Some of you that have toured the jail see our current sally port and jail booking area. As I have shown you that an ambulance can fit in there, but we can't shut the door to open the doors of the ambulance. So the jail sally port door has to remain open if we have an ambulance in and out. It's currently a two squad bay. When we look through also some of these other areas and areas that we hope to not only expand upon but remodel, part of that is the medical area. Again, we currently have a very small medical area that was a 1993 model of inmates and medications. Back in the early 90s, those on medications about 20-25%. Today, those on medications in the jail is about 80 to 90%. That has expanded as well as kind of some of the special needs of those inmates. Back in the old pod days, we had very few inmates. There was a very small population of female inmate offenders and could be housed down at the pod area. Because that has grown because of methamphetamines, property crimes, housing them at the pod in a general population setting is no longer available for us. So as we had gone through on some of the jail tours, you'll see, and the word I continue to use was cannibalize. What areas in here were originally built for are no longer being used for that. One of the most glaring is, two glaring areas, but one was the gymnasium, that is now the special housing unit. So when we took the gymnasium to build those 9 special housing cells, the workout area had to be moved somewhere. That went into a classroom. So the classroom disappeared. The old Huber dorms became minimum classification for females. So we're housing people in areas that in 1993 was never built to house that certain classification. And as you've seen our classification, medium, minimum, max, we can only put minimums down in old Huber dorms, and down in the pink area, we are housing current minimum male inmates because of population down at the pod we've moved them into a Huber dorm area as well. So really, it's just preparation for what does the future hold for us. In 2024, we had a study done. That was added in one of the previous packets. I think it was in the public protection packet. That was a 42-page study of looking at data from 2015 to 2023. So it took 8 years of a snapshot, with 20 and 21 being in there as kind of anomalies from COVID and population dips in there that wouldn't have been in there absent those 2 years. You can see the trend of average daily population going up, and these average daily populations are in-house inmates. So as we look at 2025, that's 116 inmates on an average daily basis. That does not count electronic home monitoring. Electronic home monitoring are those that have been convicted, been sentenced and allowed for Huber. We have a Huber group, which is a work release program, and then some of them can work their way to home electronic home monitoring. They still have a bracelet. So that 116 doesn't count EHM, those that are at home, but they're still in the custody of the sheriff. So that 116 last year was actually 123. We had an average of 8 people on home monitoring last year. So if that home monitoring should disappear, or we pull those individuals back in because they violated some of the rules of the jail, rules of EHM, rules of Huber, get revoked, they then become back into that ADP. So while we talk about 116, there's really 123 on average in the custody of the sheriff, which then kind of rolls into, as you look at that bar graph, that ADP 118 for 2025, we're right in line with the projections going up. Peak populations 141, 150 in 2030. Looking at those peak populations, we were hopping up to about that 150. Every once in a while, we'll bounce up there. Right now, strangely, our population today is lower. But over the weekend, we had 25 bookings. 4 came in to serve, and then there was 22 fresh arrests. There was 11 on intake on Monday, and of that 22, 23 that were in jail, they had bonded out, but they had a court appearance, a notice to appear for Monday. So that was the 22, 23 that went upstairs. I share that because of the number of receiving cells that we talk about on our anticipated jail expansion plan. The DOC recommends 10% of your total population being receiving cells. So for instance, 180, as we currently have, we should have, by DOC recommendations, that 10%. We should have 18 receiving cells. What those receiving cells do is they allow for that initial intake of a person on a fresh arrest. They go into a receiving cell, and they remain in there until they go to the court, their first court appearance. What that does, that allows for a more timely and proper classification. There are times currently now over the weekend where people are brought in. They are housed accordingly with the information we know, and then classified as soon as Monday or Tuesday roll around. This ability to have all these receiving cells puts individuals in those cells. We can see what their first court appearance will be, if it's going to be a bond, hold for the next appearance, if they're able to post bond, if there's a competency evaluation because they're not able to come up. That gives us some time to, okay, where's that proper placement, and are they staying? If they are staying, then they get assigned back to the pod area. Those receiving cells also help us keep contraband out. We do our very best on that initial screening and booking to make sure people aren't bringing in contraband, but keeping them out of the general population area for a day or 2 or 3. Sometimes that passes and flushes the system if somebody swallows something, or worse, secretes it. That gives us the ability to eliminate some of that contraband getting into the back. Sometimes that still happens now. In spite of our best efforts, we do still have some drugs that get into the back, and with fentanyl and some of these other things that can have traumatic consequences. So those receiving cells, by percentage, and that's why I shared Monday's intake. There's 22 that came in over the weekend, conceivably 22 receiving cells to keep them out of the general population. So that's kind of right in line with what we're looking at going forward of this expansion. Again, these peak highest numbers, inmates housed in the jail at any given day, generally 20% higher than the average daily population. As we go down through the bullet points, by 2030 projections regularly estimate inmate population above 150. We're trending up this year. Again, our numbers are hovering lower. The special housing unit has 9 cells. There are 7 in there today. One of those has shingles. So as we look at the 2 with 1 small day room, one of those cells is empty because we have to, when somebody has something that we don't want to get to other inmates, we have to clean, separate, and work through some of those medical issues. Once daily population reaches over a certain amount, that then makes it more possible for us to have to house outside, move inmates around to different counties, which adds additional costs, transport, court. It starts to be a juggling act that other counties are dealing with right now as well. We look at that average inmate stay. I talked about like this weekend, 22 brought in, 25 brought in, 4 serving. Some bonded out, some remain. That's that 1 to 4 days, weekends, holidays, initial intake, and then coming back up for a bond hearing several days later to review. That's usually where we get that 1 to 4 days. Again, the receiving cells, as we went through the scope of how they were built, the construction compared to the housing unit we have now in the special housing area, you can see the vast difference of construction. One is cement, bunk, no shower, a communal, not even a communal shower, taking them out into the hallway, into another area for the shower, moving them back and forth, having to move them for a phone, no TV. Again, that was the early 1990s concept. I'm not sure if that concept really works today. Special
Sure.
housing unit,
Sure.
I think that is more advanced.
You're talking about the movements, but I think one of the key things, and I see it because I see the work comp injuries, is movements is when there's the potential risk. And so in your current design of the jail, when you have to move someone for a daily shower, when you have to move someone for all these different things, every movement creates the opportunity for injury to the inmate or to our employees. Whereas the new design with the showers in the bunk cells has a less movement. And so therein lies one of the benefits of a new design.
And those that we're moving to those are our highest risk inmates. Those are our most violent. Those are those that are in crisis. Those are those that have medical issues or wheelchairs, or it brings a whole host of challenges, as Administrator Witt said, and that is where, as some of you that walk through that area, if you're fighting or trying to remove or move somebody without clothes on that's just got out of a shower, that's where our injuries, that's where it makes it extremely difficult for everybody, to include the inmate. And part of that movement and housing is for their safety and safety of others as well, to include staff. So, in the inmate analysis, special watches, those special watches that we look at there, they could be suicide, they could be mental, other mental health, depression, self-injury, not necessarily suicidal, but they're ramming their heads into the wall. And we've had an inmate that we have worked with Corporation Counsel quite extensively on self-harm and proper placement in the jail, and sometimes that's very difficult, having to house them for a safety measure. Those that need monitoring that come in that are intoxicated, coming down off of a 3-day meth binge, fentanyl, somebody that comes in and after medical clearance at the hospital, because they've claimed they swallowed drugs, part of that after-action protocol that is recommended is monitoring that inmate. In the event there is a baggie in there that wasn't seen, if something breaks, we need to have a closer eye on them. Well, we've got those 3 cells to do it. And as I mentioned on some of the tours, there was a high-risk inmate back in the mid-teens, the River Falls gentleman that killed his 3 children. He was in there for 13 months, so that eliminated 1 spot. So we had 2, and that was before the special housing unit was built. We had 2 to play Tetris with 150 other inmates on who was in crisis and who wasn't. The 9 cells has helped tremendously, but even in 2019 when we talked about it, that was just a stopgap and an assistance knowing that this plan was in the works 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and here we are. We talked about separation classification. That's really our juggling act. And those sub-classifications, well, the male-female doesn't change, but those can change on the fly after the initial placement. Something else could come up. They become fighting. Somebody finds out why they're in jail. Now they become a target. Now they become a victim. Now they become vulnerable. So we're moving people around quite often. And then we get into our jail inspections, and the last 3 years have had a theme to them, and that has been about the classification, properly classifying, sooner classification, more quick on getting them to places they need to be. And on that, I might bring up Jail Inspector Brad Hoover, and hopefully he can talk about some of the classification, really what he's seeing in other jails that are currently under construction, planning, just opened. And he can share that hopefully what he's seeing across the state is kind of what we're seeing here. Mr. Hoover, if you'd like to come up. Because I think that there's going to be a lot of questions on that. Bob Rohrt's also here, and Bob is the head of HHS, and he brings a very unique insight of Ramsey County, where he was previously employed, and some of the studies or thoughts on placement, mental health, construction of facilities, housing. And I think all of that can be very important to shed more light on why we're looking at the plans we're looking at. Brad, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Hi, good morning. Like the sheriff said, my name is Brad Hoover. I'm the detention specialist for the Department of Corrections here on the Western Region. And those lovely reports that you see up there were mine. So I'll talk a little bit about the stuff the sheriff had just referenced, but by any means, please, if you have questions, ask. I'd be happy to answer anything you have. So the sheriff did touch base on a lot of the stuff that I was prepared to talk about. The big thing you're hearing a lot this morning is classification. So I apologize if you already know this, but if there's some members on the board that are new, just some cliff notes on that. So Department of Corrections Administrative Code DOC 350 regulates the minimum standards for a jail to operate. One of the things is it talks about that the jail has to have an objective classification system in place, which they do. Staff have to be trained in that instrument, which they are. And then it goes into housing of said classification. One is going to be inmates of the same classification in a dorm have to be the same. For individuals that might not know what a dorm is, it's essentially just a large space with a lot of bunks in it. And all those individuals in that space have to be the same classification. The other one is if a county, which St. Croix is approved to double cell, individuals in that cell have to be the same classification. Now, the county has failed to meet those criteria the last several years. And that is not something specific to St. Croix County. That is a criteria that across the state has been harder and harder to meet. This jail being built in 1993, I'd be willing to bet, I don't have the data in front of me, but I'd be willing to bet that the classification was a little bit different back then. Majority of the individuals that probably came through your facility here, probably dealing with some marijuana charges. We're probably dealing with some OWIs. Probably a common violent offense would be maybe a domestic situation that might happen. A lot of those incidents just aren't true today. The counties that we're dealing with in Wisconsin and across the country are dealing with high-level violent offenses, dealing with mental health needs. We're dealing with individuals under unknown substances. So the attention to those individuals is risen. And it's hard for the county to meet that. It's hard for the sheriff's department to meet that because the sheriff said that you have 3 receiving cells. And he's right. We talked about this, that a good starting point for a population would be 10% of that. And if, let's say, an individual is being placed on a suicide watch, is identified of self-harm, that individual would typically go into a receiving cell. Well, that ties up one of them. And then if an individual comes in, one of the 7 per day, or one of the 22 over the weekends comes in under some type of unknown substance, that person would be probably put in a detox protocol. That takes up a receiving cell. That leaves one space for the sheriff's department, for Captain Cormanick and their staff to navigate all the bookings to come through to make sure that those are appropriate to come in to see if they're going to go back into GP. It makes it very, very hard for them to do. Then on top of that, based on the classification system and how long that takes for them to do that, they have to find an appropriate bed inside the jail if they're going to be staying. Now, the minimum standards for the jail is max, medium, and minimum, and that has been hard for the jail to meet just that. The sheriff touched base on this a little bit, the sub-classification levels, and I'm not going to bore you with the details, but some of the high-level stuff is going to be your transgender population, inmates with mental health needs, juveniles that might come through with adult charges. We're going to deal with individuals that are at risk of being victimized and individuals that are at risk of victimizing individuals. So those are some stuff that, on top of being identified as a max custody, medium, or minimum, Captain Cormanick's staff have to figure out also the subclassifications on, is it appropriate to house so-and-so with so-and-so, based on some of those things. So it isn't just, oh, we have a vacant bed, let's just throw that person in there. They have to go through and do a diligent, in-depth dive of, is this a safe placement? There is no duty to retreat here in the jail. The inmates have nowhere else to go. So making sure that the individuals are housed together is an appropriate placement. And those are just some of the stuff that Captain Cormanick and his team have to do at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, because they can't tie up, they don't have the receiving space to, just park people in there to kind of figure out how we're going to manage this population. So those are some of the stuff that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Any questions on classification, housing? Please.
Yeah, I'll start, and I have a lot of questions.
Sure.
But our awareness of mental health issues in the last decade has increased, connected to all sorts of levels of crime. The better question might be, do we have any inmates that don't have a mental health issue? I mean, just the act of being arrested can trigger something. So I'm very interested to see how if we were to go forward, how we address those issues. And then related to that, something that I've heard about for more than a decade is this cost associated that we have here living in the far western part of the state with the transportation of people in a higher level of crisis to Winnebago. I'd like to see how we can address that since we have jail discussions on the table.
Sure.
So,
So I'll touch a little bit on the mental health issue, and then I'll defer that over to the experts here. Mental health crisis in the jail is very real. It is probably the number one concern when I go across the state and I talk with sheriffs and administrators. And then when I'm at conferences, on a national level, people are trying to figure out how to manage that population. The staff do a great job at the initial screening when they bring individuals in to try to identify medical and mental health risks. And then there's protocols in place on how to maybe to get them directed to those departments. But you said, you talked about Winnebago, and correct me, Joe, if I'm wrong, but it's Mendota that you typically are dealing with?
Winnebago for the emergency detention.
Sure.
Initial placements for that, or competency and stuff in the jail is all those.
Sure. So with Winnebago and Mendota, so that's a tough topic as well, because if the staff will refer them over to get, let's say, chaptered, to say, hey, they're not appropriate for here, they can certainly say, yep, they agree that, this person has mental health needs, that they need to come here. But what happens then is they get a tentative date, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, a year out, to say, we'll take that individual. So you have the fact that this person has been identified as a serious mental health need, but yet they can't get them there. So the staff here at the facility have to manage that individual within their facility until they can get that individual there. And meanwhile, they don't stop coming. So the staff are juggling at, like, how do they best manage that with the current facility that they have? Does that make sense?
it does up to a point. One of the things we'll be considering today is the potential for a tax increase to our residents. And my frame of mind, and maybe it's simplistic, is I don't want to have to explain a tax increase without also addressing an ongoing problem that we've had for more than a decade. Yeah.
And
I think I'm going to defer to Corporation Counsel on emergency detentions, Mendota, differences and challenges.
Yes, so I want to make sure that everybody is aware of the difference between somebody who has a mental health issue who is dangerous. So that would be a Chapter 51, that's under a civil statute, and those individuals are brought to an approved treatment facility. And the facilities we contract with for St. Croix County are Amory Regional Facility Medical Center in Amory, Mayo Hospital in Eau Claire, and then Winnebago Mental Health Institute. So when you hear either the sheriff's office or Bob Rohrt talk about placements at Winnebago, those are people that are in mental health crisis who are a danger to themselves or others, and their mental health is treatable. And that, no crime. Those are just individuals that are in crisis. So sometimes we do place people under Chapter 51s out of the jail, but most often those are people in crisis in the community. They haven't committed a crime, but they need placement in an inpatient facility to treat their mental illness.
And they are never going to our jail.
Correct. Under a Chapter 51, they cannot be placed in the jail. The jail is not an approved treatment facility. Now, Mr. Hoover also referenced Mendota Mental Health Institute. That's the facility that houses individuals who needed to be treated to competency. So as part of somebody's criminal case in the court system, their attorney or the judge can raise competency, meaning that they're not competent to proceed with the proceedings because they don't understand the process because of their mental illness. Those individuals are then placed at Mendota Mental Health Institute, and as Mr. Hoover indicated, there's an 8 to 10 month wait. And so what Bob Rohrt could speak to is the programming that his team has implemented in the jail in assistance with the state, to try to have people treated to competency in the jail. So there's I don't know what the term is, there's a term for it, but there's Medicaid-assisted treatment, and that's for people that are addicted to a substance, so a substance use disorder. There's also a program that state DHS has implemented in jails to treat people to competency in the jail because there's such a long wait to get to Mendota. So that's the difference. I just want people to know that when we say Winnebago, that is not anybody that typically is involved in the criminal justice system. Those are individuals in crisis that are dangerous to themselves or others. Suicide attempts, could be, I guess, harming others could be part of a crime, but law enforcement oftentimes tries to redirect those people to get the treatment they need at Winnebago. So hopefully that helps answer the question.
Well, it does, but the connection I've been making is usually we're hearing about the expense associated with transportation from our sheriff's department. And so I was
correct.
hoping that we could mitigate that issue.
You will not. It's a completely unrelated issue. The sheriff's office does all the transports for Chapter 51s, either the sheriff's office or any law enforcement agency. But that is a civil action that is separate and distinct from the criminal actions that are in the jail. So this jail expansion will not reduce the transports to Winnebago and Chapter 51. That's going to have to be another solution.
All right, thank you.
It's my understanding that Minnesota has detoxification centers and so forth, whereas Wisconsin doesn't. And wouldn't that help to have for detox instead of putting them in the jail and watching them there?
I guess I can't really speak on behalf of that. That's really not my background.
I think Heather again.
Sure, I can speak to that. So detoxification is also a civil matter under Chapter 51, 51.45. We used to utilize L.E. Phillips in Chippewa Falls as our detoxification facility. They closed, so that's no longer an option. So what law enforcement does now, if someone needs detoxification, they bring them to a local emergency department and they detox in the emergency department. We don't have any other options in this western region of the state for detox services any longer. But they don't detox in the jail unless they've committed a crime. If they've committed a crime, the sheriff can speak to how their staff monitor someone that's going through detox in the jail, but they would only be in the jail if they were alleged to have committed a crime.
And I think that's where kind of gets down muddy, where some of the thought is that this is going to be a mental health facility for solely mental health. This jail expansion are solely for those that have committed or are accused of committing a crime. They end up in the jail. With them, they may bring mental health, they may bring substance abuse or intoxication. Without bringing those solely do not come into the jail. We do not watch those that are drunk. We do not watch those that are high, absent a crime. If they are a danger to the community, that's how they end up in jail. If they are a danger to themselves, they end up somewhere else.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
And I was just going to offer to the county board, if eventually a presentation on Chapter 51s and how that process works is helpful. Obviously, we can do it at HHS board or the county board. My staff can assist with that along with Bob Roart's staff, because I have one attorney that's dedicated to handling those Chapter 51 cases. So that can probably be another presentation that we provide.
Supervisor Rice, you had a question?
Oh, I have questions. Could we go back a couple of slides? It might have been 5 and 6 where it was looking at projected population. And by the way, I did do the tour, and I am impressed that that the facility needs modernization. So when I look at this projection, what is this based on, Sheriff? And did you do the projections, or who did the projections?
The projections were the 2015 to 2023 projections by that firm that gave us the 42 pages. I'm not sure if you got that or not. I'm thinking that was, I don't know if that was with the entire group or if that was with public protection.
Yeah, I know we've shared it at Public Protection before. So, I mean, we've been talking about the jail project for a couple of years, so that study is 2 years old now.
Yeah, but that gave us the 8 years in the base, which is where we came up with, those ADPs, and that kind of got us on that projection of looking at those years and moving up. That's what we based that off of, was that study.
Okay, and the reason I'm focusing on this is we've also seen that there is information, projections of our broader population over the next decade. And for the first time in a very long time, at the state level, we are looking at either flat or declining population. As soon as, we're seeing it in Hudson already in our school system, just it's low birth rate, and net migration is negative from around the state. So it requires that we think differently, because the tape in all of our heads is St. Croix County is growing, we're growing, and now we're seeing evidence that we might not be growing as fast. So it's those assumptions that I think matter. In the demographics of the population, are they predominantly male and under the age of 40, would you say?
I believe it is 75% male. And yeah, I believe that is probably going to be the age range.
Yeah, that is, so if we were to look out, and I know that predicting the future is hazardous, and we have to make decisions based on the future. But if we look out, even 5 years, the number of bodies in the state that fit that profile may very well decline. So I'd like to see if we can't refresh these projections a little bit based on more current population
Well,
records.
personally, I'd be cautious on state compared to St. Croix County,
Yeah,
because we seem to be the hub of building right now, and the number of individuals, and by the projected and even this year's population, I'd be curious on housing permits, building permits. I think St. Croix County is a bit different than Russ County as we look at state population.
and even
stuff.
different than Polk, yes. So it's the projection that I'm concerned about. So I don't know if anyone else has that observation.
Please speak up, Administrator or Supervisor Rice, will you? It's very difficult to hear, and I've heard complaints from our meeting the other night before last also about people not speaking into their microphones. So please, 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 if we're going to be transparent loudly. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
I'm also interested in this notion of the trend, and as Supervisor Rice said, trying to correlate it in my mind about what we think will go on with the broader county population. And so I would be interested in seeing, because I don't think I did see, and was probably before my time, but I would be interested in seeing the study that you referred to that may shed more light on how the future projections were calculated. It looks to me on the other slide, not 6, on 5, I mean, it looked to me just in a cursory glance on the history that the max has stayed pretty consistent. I mean, the max at 140 in 2018, that's sort of where we are today. The average has increased, and it's bounced around. As you said, there's some statistical width here in terms of what happens, but calculating the projection on the maximum bears really heavily on the argument for timing and when that maximum is going to become really problematic for you and your team. So I think we really need to understand that better and have confidence in the projection of the maximum and when that's going to cross your threshold.
And I can appreciate that. And that max is a number. It doesn't take into account that separation and classification. I can put 151 regular individuals in there, but you throw in all those classifications, and those peaks are extremely difficult to manage and separate safely. So,
Hey, Sheriff,
Yes.
if you could flip the slide to address this question, flip the slide back to the layout, that one there. So we're doing two things with this jail expansion. One is you're increasing the total capacity of the jail, and that's primarily with the new pod. And then two is you're reorganizing the jail with the special housing and receiving area, which is where the biggest need currently is today. That's the area that they struggle the most with. We did look at an option of not doing the new pod. So out of this $46 million project, the new pod, if you wanted to cut that off, would save you about $10 million. And so that's a possibility. So you could save 10 million, cut the new pod off. That's the only thing that's addressing the maximum capacity. But the other 36 million is addressing the other issues within the jail. My only concern with that is 10 years later, when you want to add the capacity and you build that new pod, instead of $10 million, it's going to be $30 million to add the new pod. So.
Just as a follow-up, I don't misinterpret my comments about better understanding capacity to be in any way a lack of support for what you're proposing. Thank you for the good tour. We spent 2 hours down there, and I know you spent that much time with a bunch of other groups that went through as well. I'm sold. The 33 years that facility is aged, clearly something needs to be done. And I think your team has done a yeoman's job of being flexible and adapting that space to the changing requirements. So, well done with making do on something that wasn't designed for the current problem, essentially. Having said that, I really want to make sure that we understand the critical nature of the timing. And related to that, to pick up on something that Supervisor Rice said, the related aspects of the Health and Human Services portion of the equation, I think, are, in my mind, the biggest questions. And, what we're proposing here with the jail remodel or build or expansion is really, reinforcing, augmenting a tool that we've had in our toolbox, which is, the jail as a solution to the problems that the county deals with. But I think today's environment means that we may need other tools in the toolbox, and I'm particularly interested in these comments about mental health, addiction, family and domestic, and do we have the tools that we need in our toolbox to deal with those in today's environment? And if the answer is no, which where my suspicions are at, as a county, what do we need to do to build out some of those tools as well? And if we decide to do that, what impact would it have on the concept for what we want to do with the jail?
And Sheriff, before Bob answers that, could you speak to Supervisor Rice's concern about the population and how many inmates do you have that are not St. Croix County residents? It's not just St. Croix County residents that commit crimes in our county, correct? That
is correct. Brent, can you pull up that study and find that bar graph just to give me those numbers? We did just run some numbers as well through HHS. Bill Schultz is our mental health provider in the jail. And in this calendar year now up till July, he has had 180 inmate contacts, of those requiring some discussion with him in mental health. So they remain fairly active. And when Brent comes back with that, and even if we fix the problem on the outside of Winnebago, that Chapter 51 model, the jail is still only for those that have been committed or accused brought in. And
Sheriff Knutson, could you speak more directly into your microphone? I'm receiving complaints. Thank you.
home city in county. Let's go with home state, St. Croix County Jail. Wisconsin is 74%, Minnesota is 21%, thank you. Illinois, much smaller, 1%. So 75% are St. Croix, are Wisconsin. Of that, 74% being Wisconsin, 29%, then it breaks it down in county. So, looks like 29% New Richmond, 28% Hudson, 10% Somerset. So that breaks that portion down. I do not have county broken out, but I do have state broken out. And that'll be on that one as well. Page 17 on that 42-pager.
Okay, Supervisor Carlson.
I used to work in
Microphone and speak.
There we go. I used to work in a juvenile detention center, and we went from 3 pods, 2 boys and 1 girls. We had 24 for boys and 12 for girls, and they built a new detention center that had 8 pods. And when we moved into that, fights went down, staff assaults went down. We were able to be much more efficient. So they eventually, even with the bigger one, they actually cut some staff. They didn't need as many. It was, as far as for mental health, being able to separate people properly really helps. And the way we have it now, I don't think we can, well, we're getting hit on inspections for it. I think we're already past the point where we need a new jail, just for that reason. It'll lower lawsuits, injuries, it'll help with the mental health. It's much calmer for the people that are locked up, so it keeps them from getting stressed out. So I'm fully for getting a new expansion.
Thank you. Yes.
Just before we move into the mental health answer, because I'm interested in that as well. But I was wondering if our inspector could give us his perspective on what our jail population is like compared to either neighboring counties. I know I've heard about us versus like Washington County before over the river. I don't know if you have that data or not. But kind of how we compare both in total numbers and kind of what people are in jail for. I guess I don't know if you guys know that or not. But that's something that I would be interested in as well. And I know that that's not necessarily falling to the sheriff as to, why people are in jail, but that would help us to kind of look at the broader reasons why our jail population is what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's difficult for me to speak on anything in Washington County as far as their criminal justice system and how their judges are reviewing and that housing, so.
Correct, but like Polk County, Pierce County.
Yeah. Brad's gearing up with coffee for the next round.
I guess it's hard for me to say because to say mental health is a St. Croix issue is not true. Every county is dealing with that. What I will say, without talking specifically about other counties, is that this issue that we're talking about today is a major reason why so much jail construction is going on in the state of Wisconsin. You're not the only county that's looking at that. On the Western region alone, within the last 3 years, we've opened up 2 new facilities based on the specific issues that we're talking about here. I'm involved with 5 other projects right now, and this is the stuff that we're talking about, and the reason why they're looking at updating their current facility or adding on to their current facility, because of the trends that we're seeing in 2026. So when we talk about apples and oranges, I can't speak about what goes on over across the river, but I'd be willing to bet that speaking to other sheriffs and administrators across the country, this is the same issue. They're all trying to figure out how to manage this population. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. I know I
Okay.
have impossible questions.
I'm here for anything you need, so.
Any other questions? Anyone else have a question? Yes, Supervisor Rice.
Maybe it might require Brad again. Are you aware of any counties that are taking more of a regional approach to this? So for example, some of the smaller counties partnering with some of the larger population counties. So instead of looking at it as a county by county basis, they're saying like a Western Wisconsin answer.
Sure.
Especially, we are seeing, I know from one of the charts, the length of time that some of the inmates are here is sometimes long, and that seems like it would lend itself to a regional approach for that population.
So just to make sure I understand, are you asking like if two counties were to build one facility and share that facility?
Or if we were to do the new pod, potentially partnering with one of the other counties to essentially have them rent space from us.
Okay. So, yeah, there are counties that rent bed space. That absolutely does happen. That's a common theme with counties that can't house their inmates safely, so they'll rent out beds, essentially. We have counties that do that. That's not an uncommon issue. It's just something that you as a county have to determine, is that going to be your long-term solution to rent out? I would just say that, keep in mind for the individuals here that aren't aware of it, that the counties that rent out, they're still your inmate. It's the county's responsibility. And you are responsible for whatever the deal is. But at the end of the day, if a county, they don't have to agree to house your inmates. The other thing is that at any point in time, they can say, come and get them. And you're still responsible. You have to go and get them, and then you have to figure out how you're gonna house them appropriately. So that is something that counties need to weigh in consideration if that's the route they wanna go.
Yeah, and state law requires that the county jail be located within the county seat. So you couldn't build one jail to serve multiple counties under the current state law. I don't think, right, Brad?
So, yeah, so it just says that, I'm not sure if the jail has to sit in the county seat. I know the courts have to sit in the county seat. I don't know if Corp can kind of chime in and verify that, but I believe that's what the case is, because I've had that conversation with other counties when they're looking at real estate of trying to find a spot. That's something that obviously that the county needs to consider on where they want to be. We have had some counties talk about regionalizing, where it's like maybe they partner up, maybe rural facilities, if that works out. Again, that is something that the county's going to need to figure out. Yeah, to your point of renting beds, that's certainly an option. So.
Supervisor Schmidt, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you. My questions really are for the sheriff, so, and also I want to maybe put this out there first, and this might be directed to Administrator Witt, and you don't have to respond this moment, but I'm just curious if internally in the county here, if we have some better detailed projections about population and demographics or anything that might lend itself to the group to understand, or at least be really specific about St. Croix County, because I think somebody mentioned, a supervisor over there, Carlson, sorry. I can't read those sign things, so, and, at my age, names sometimes aren't right there. But anyway, mentioned about the construction and things. I mean, you look at the multifamily that somebody here that probably hit a golf ball that far, but, there's still a lot of growth happening in St. Croix County, different types of housing and things like that to add to different levels of cost and things for housing. So without getting down that rabbit hole too far, I'll get back to the sheriff. So my question really for you is, I think, especially for me, because I'm new, I see this plan and this number and things, but my sense would be that maybe as you looked at a plan and you talked to consultants and things, there might have been other bells and whistles or other things that might have been considered as part of the plan. And I just want to, frame it the best we can. Is this like the most expensive option you looked at, or did you take some things out that you said, yeah, we don't really need that? And before you answer, I also want to piggyback on what Supervisor Roan said, the tour and things. I went from having probably just next to nothing in terms of awareness and understanding of how the jail operates to understanding it a great deal more, and the movement of people within the jail, the people incarcerated there, the level of what truly felt to me very much risky work for the jailers and things, the coordination with, the radios just to make sure when you open this door, there isn't somebody else standing there and things like that. All that work and the stress and things that puts on the staff and the operational, just gymnastics that you guys go through to make that happen it blew my mind. It really did. It was completely impressive. And understanding more about this receiving and things like that, I very much am understanding the need for an improved facility. But anyway, back to that question, are there things that you took out or that you pared down to get to this number of 46 million? Because if there are, I just think it'd be fair to you to be able to say, we did this. Or, maybe you just came at it with, this is really what we have to have, and you got that number. But I'm just curious if there's anything that other people have in jails that you go, hey, we don't need this, or we don't need to spend that much money. Because I think that would be helpful to know. Thank you. Sorry for being so long-winded.
No, thank you for the kind words, and as well as Supervisor Rowan for recognizing the staff and the difficult job that they have. We're very proud of what they do on a daily basis and their dedication to that safety and security of those inmates. This footprint is what we believe we need that will fit our needs. But in that footprint, you'll see that from the old to the new is moving of the kitchen, because when we add on, we've landlocked the kitchen. It's bolstering that medical area. So some of those things that I don't think the flow will work as well, that adds that cost. But I think in the long run, I think those movements, because you can see over here on the far right, that very turquoise, that becomes the kitchen and the loading dock area for jail meals. That is now currently the receiving area and booking area and jail sally port. So there is some of that cost. There's one cost to build, and then there's another cost to remodel. And this is hopes of getting all of those things in place. To Supervisor Carlson's point of a better flow, because you saw all that staff running, and it's because we've added on. And the attorney-client area to visit, we got to take people all the way through the facility to get them to their attorney-client, where this new addition hopefully reduces that. Inmate movement, back to Supervisor or Administrator Witt's point of the more we move, the more we have the ability for something to happen.
And if I'm correct, Sheriff, we looked at staffing needs for the expanded facility, and they had called for 4. We've actually added 2 already. So we only need to add 2 corrections deputies to staff the size of an expansion. So a very small lift there on the operating side.
Supervisor Rowan.
I have a follow-up for Mr. Hoover. Sorry. I was reflecting on your comment about, we're not the only county in the state dealing with these issues, the sort of modern demands of what incarceration looks like in 2026. And I'm very curious about, I think have the potential to be a tremendous resource to us because of what you see around the state. And my question is really, have you noted any counties that you think are doing a particularly innovative approach to both the capacity problem, but also to some of the HHS issues that we talked about, mental health, addiction, family, domestic issues? Are there models that we could look to that you would say are, sort of best practices and maybe a little outside the box and leading edge that as we think about what we want to do here, that we could learn from, either in Wisconsin or to the extent that you interface with peers outside the state. I'd be curious if you have any advice for us.
Sure. Well, I guess in a nutshell, I think that the counties that have gone through this process, and they've clearly identified that there's a need, that they can't meet today's standards with yesterday's structure. I think the counties that have said, we are going to move forward with the project and take a serious look at the clientele that they're dealing with. The sheriff and his staff in the jail, they know their population better than anybody. They know who they're dealing with and what the issues are. So the counties that do that and then look at it and say, okay, we're going to build a facility that's going to meet those needs, and to the point of projecting the future of kind of saying, hey, this is where we struggle at, this is what we know we need to work on, and this is what we're predicting based on the data of what housing classification, whatever. And they've moved forward with a model of either being, efficient as far as like safety and security, housing of special needs inmates. We know that mental health crisis across the country is rising. So building for that, for those individuals and how to house those individuals. I think those are the ones that are going to be better off in the future, honestly, because they've clearly identified it and they've moved forward to addressing that. Does that help?
It does. I was sort of hoping you would have some particular examples you could lend, but.
Sure. Well,
You mentioned Dakota County.
yes.
And their
So Dakota County, just your neighbor over in the state, they did a special housing unit that they built, a mental health unit that I went over and toured. And that really kind of goes to the fact that they understood that their receiving area just wasn't proper placement for individuals that were struggling with mental health illness. So in order to alleviate that pressure and put them into a more secure and appropriate environment, they built an additional wing. And don't quote me on this, but I want to say off memory, I want to say it was like 3 or 4 wings. And it's clear, it's really driven towards the mental health evidence of support. It's very earth tone colors, it's very softer environment, but totally geared towards individuals that have been identified as struggling with mental health and saying, hey, we're going to take these individuals over here, and we're not only going to monitor them, but maybe give them tools and work with them and then evaluate them to see is it appropriate to either take them out and put them back in general population, or is this a long-term solution until they move on to their next stop? I really thought that was a progressive approach to them for that. And that is certainly something on all jail projects that I'm dealing with, to talk about that. What does that look like in your project in order to manage that population safely and securely for everybody? So that would be one that I tell people, like, hey, go over and take a look at that and talk to them about how they came about.
Supervisor Counter, you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. My question there is 2-part. One, under the new design here that you've presented, our last to date now we're out in excess of 30 years since the original facility was built, and there has been some expansion projects with it, but under this new design, how long would you say that the life cycle of this particular project is? Would we get another 30 years or I guess because that kind of helps us understand our cost versus the length of use before we're going to have to do something again possibly.
I would sure think that this is a 30-year endeavor. Even going through things with Brad Hoover on, there may be some tweaks. Again, this is a framework of it. There may be some movement within this with the medical area. with more, there are jails that have not an outdoor rec, but a room where towards the top a large garage door opens for that fresh air, that sunlight, that we don't have here, that we're thinking, what corner do we fit that in? So still bringing some of those things to this. Again, this is not set in stone, and we'll be moving things around. I have not seen Dakota County yet. Actually, again, that was just a conversation that was brought up in the last couple days of, I need to get over there and take a look at that and just see what their thought and concept is.
And my second part of that, our second question with this is, yeah, I guess, yeah, if you're still not, this isn't your draft copy yet for design layout, but one of the concerns is just want to ensure that as we go through in the design process, that you also incorporate in for any future expansions or where we're going to go with things so that we design it in a way that we're not penned in and put in a position that we would have to start over or do something extremely expensive for the future, to just have that thought pattern there that you would have potential for the future, looking ahead again for the next 30 years. You know, where are we going to go for the next part? Where's that movement going to be for the construction?
No, I agree with that, and, you know, one of the, to your point, the thing that proves it is, with this expansion, we've landlocked the kitchen that we would need to move it. So looking out, we would look at those areas of, if we do have to expand in 30 years, and you need to make this decision again, Supervisor Connor, that we don't landlock anything.
Supervisor McIntosh.
He just covered my question.
Yes.
Yeah, Sheriff Knutson, I would just like to get your reaction to some of the thoughts that have kind of been brought up already in terms of demographics and even the new pod, because I think that as we look at this, I think there's a strong sense that you know, the inmate safety as well as staff safety, you know, is really important. The receiving center expansion, the special housing and so forth are, you know, critical elements of, you know, responding, you know, to changing population. But you know, kind of going to the demographic element of it, one of the things that, you know, we're seeing that the biggest growth really in the county is coming, you know, I think over the next few years is in the 60-plus category, which is hopefully less criminal. And but anyway, so if we were to leave out the new pod, recognizing that you know, the new receiving center and the special housing is going to take a lot of pressure off the current pod. And, you know, even in terms of the new pod, you know, that, you know, by the time, you know, it may be actually needed, if it is needed, and we don't even know if it would be, you know, it might not be needed, but, you know, say that at some point in time we determine that it is needed. There may be some changes, again, in terms of population type and or corrections philosophy or whatever that would suggest that maybe that new pod, you know, would be designed differently. I'd just like to get your reaction to that thought.
Yeah, there is that component of an aging population, ADA compliance, and this theory of this and this template of this pod, the concept was actually derived from Trempealeau that just opened up last year with this smaller housing podular area with smaller day rooms with less people in there for better separation. So really that concept wasn't something that, hey, would this work? It's It's one that's within the last couple of years that really caught our eye. We've also gone over to Scott County and looked at their new construction and just tried to get around and looking at how are others preparing for this as well. So we're not reinventing that wheel.
Any other questions? Any other questions? If not, oh, excuse me, yes.
So basically, just to recap, when people ask, thank you. To recap, when people ask, so you're going to increase my taxes, why? I'm saying that we would respond, number one, growth of the county. Two, having better intake will increase safety of the staff and the inmates. That it will create a safer environment for female inmates because they'll have their separate section, which will be larger. And that also for mental health, that there'll be more facilities or safer facilities for that population as well. Is there anything that you, and also with the safety, it sounds like it would reduce worker compensation claims perhaps. Is there any other bullet points that you could think of?
It's really just managing, it's the managing of those that require different needs than those in 1993 when this was built. We have a different population to manage than we did, and this current structure and facility was not built to manage 2026 issues.
Yes, Supervisor McIntosh.
Just to piggyback off of that, I was wondering if it would be possible to get kind of a summary document with a lot of the statistics that have been requested today, some of these positive points. I would also like to commend you for the jail tour and the job that you guys are doing. I came into this position, no new jail, why would we do that? And it's like, oh, okay, I understand now. And so I think I'm also sold on that it's necessary, but to help justify that to our constituents would be helpful.
Okay, yes, Supervisor Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to maybe add to that bullet point. I think if we look at that slide with your classifications and things again, and, that's really what drives the separation, et cetera, and the fact that how many years consecutively, 3 years, at least, that we've been cited for not having adequate facilities to meet that requirement. I'm not trying to pass the buck here, but that's part of it, a big part of it. In my mind, the biggest part of it, and the whole moving people around and safety and et cetera of inmates and staff. But I just really I think that has to be almost the lead of the story, in my opinion. So thank you.
All right, just one. Supervisor Shirley Carter, have I missed anything that you wanted? You're pretty small on my screen. Is there anything that you want to ask before we move on?
I think that the questions that around mental health that I would be asking have been asked, so I will continue to listen and take it all into account.
Okay, thank you. Sheriff Knutson, do you want to continue on with your presentation? And you had a few slides left, if I recall.
No, I think I got through the
okay.
slides. The last three were,
I hate to see wasted slides, so.
were the 3 DOC ones.
Yes, Supervisor Weiss.
Yeah, my question is, we've alluded to mental health a few times, and I know Bob Roard is here. Today, will we be hearing something from him related to this topic, addressing mental health and inmates and incarceration?
Maybe so.
I don't know, Bob, if you have any prepared comments or things.
Bob is always prepared, but we have to pay extra for his comments. So we have to first vote if that's possible. No.
All
right, I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Hey, good morning. I threw my back out, so I'm a little slow. I would need a little help with a specific topic that you would like me to.
Bob, I think if you could explain to the supervisors what services we have in the jail with Bill Scholes and the other individual, I think her name is Erin, could be wrong, but those services that we have right now that, you know, that individual is embedded under behavioral health but placed in the jail 40 hours a week.
Sure. We were able to hire Bill as a behavioral health professional embedded in the jail through opioid settlement dollars. That's how we fund that position. So the idea there was to assist jail staff with many of the things that have been talked about already in working with those inmates specifically with mental health and addiction needs and try and help them in the moment with whatever crisis they were having and to connect them to something on the outside when they reenter communities. The other position that Heather alluded to in the jail is a therapist, a mental health therapist, who's funded through a grant right now. It's called the SCIP grant, the State Crisis Intervention Program. Unfortunately, this grant ends in September. It's a part-time position. I forget her total hours, but they're a couple of days a week, I think. She's able to do assessments with her credentials and her educational background, so she can do a more in-depth assessment of someone that maybe the sheriff or his staff identify as needing a more thorough mental health assessment, and then again, connect that person to ongoing care once they leave the jail. Again, that's a grant-funded part-time position. Our challenge is with finding funding around how to assist with these kinds of needs, and we either have to look at unique opportunities like opioid settlement dollars, for instance, or a grant opportunity that Cheryl Lopez, our deputy director, was able to acquire. And we'll continue to do that as long as it's beneficial to the sheriff and jail staff.
Any questions for Bob? Yes, sir, Mr. Fosterling.
Yeah, there's a reference to treatment to competency, and we've got that long pipeline waiting for essentially transfer to another place, where that can happen. If we could do that, it would essentially move that whole process up more rapidly in terms, and maybe even have an impact in terms of reducing jail population. Does that sound correct? Is it possible for us to do that?
We've had, I would say, Supervisor, for the last 2 or 3 years, in-depth discussions in our CJCC subcommittee, Behavioral Health Subcommittee, around the issue of competency and all of the other topics that have been discussed today. In cooperation with Justice Support Services, the DA's office, probation, the courts, sheriff's office, everybody. It's an ongoing discussion on how to address the topic of competency more effectively. Again, there are some grant opportunities specifically around that topic because it's broader than St. Croix County. We don't have an immediate I don't have an immediate solution for that particular thing right now, but I can say that it's actively being discussed in CJCC meetings and subcommittees because we recognize that it's an opportunity to do something different there. That's not a great answer, but it's in discussion at this point. It's a complicated matter, so it's not easy to solve, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Chair Fiedler.
In addition to that, I think building our own mental health facility, I think you would find to be cost prohibitive for the county to take that on. That's why you see state facilities generally running these types of facilities.
So are you saying that, a treatment, within the expanded facility as, it's planned, is not feasible?
I would just be cautious about saying treatment within the jail. I think what we're trying to do is be complementary to what the sheriff's needs are in the jail to assist people in crisis or people that would benefit from connections to care outside of the jail. We want to be supplemental in terms of helping the jail staff better attend to those inmates that come to the jail with a variety of mental health and addiction needs. How do we help those people get the care that they need? Because the reality is that people with mental health conditions who are undergoing treatment are significantly less likely to commit crimes. Same with addiction. So if we can provide care for those people once they leave jail, connect them to something outside of there, the likelihood of them recommitting crimes is less likely, and that's part of the benefit of doing that. I've lost the thread of my thought there.
The question really was, in terms of treatment to competency, is that feasible within the expanded facility as planned?
Heather, you can.
So I know that Char Lopez from the department has been speaking to state DHS representatives because treatment to competency in criminal cases is a function of state Department of Human Services, and that's why individuals are often placed at Mendota so they can be treated to competency. With the long wait, they have created these jail-based competency restoration programs where DHS brings staff into the jail to try to treat the individuals to competency. And Char Lopez and I believe Natalie Radich has been working with the state to see how the county can also be part of that to help people. The sheriff or chief deputy Standard might be able to speak to also our contracted jail medical, Southern Health Partners. They have a component that is mental health treatment. It is quite expensive. I think it's $200,000 a year if we were to add on that service to our jail medical contract, which is already over $500,000 a year. So there are some steps that the state is taking to do the jail-based restoration to competency in the jail itself. And I'm on a work group at the state level that's trying to modify Wisconsin Statute 971 to make that happen, where then state DHS would pay local counties to do that. But that's still probably 2 years out.
Thank you. Supervisor Fiedler.
I just want to make an observation. This isn't a question, Bob, if you'd like to go back, but I was privileged to serve as chair of the Public Protection and Safety Committee the last 7 years. I've toured the jail many, many times with the sheriff and have extraordinary confidence in and trust in what he would propose and what the staff would propose. They're an extraordinary professional organization. I am very cognizant of the problems of overpopulation. Just looking, though, quickly and picking up on something Administrator Witt said about the pod. The pod seems to be maybe a bit of a luxury. If we just added special housing and receiving, we would add 52 beds. 52 beds. Our average population now, as you said, is 118. If we added the 52, we'd be at 170, over what we have. 170 total, much higher than the 118 we have now. And that is higher than the peak projection for 2040, according to your statistics, and 30 higher than the average population. So I would just throw out that perhaps with an increase of 52 beds, half of which are for receiving, half of which more or less are for special housing, we would substantially meet the needs well into even the peak numbers for the next generation without doing the PUD. And so if my numbers are correct, I would just throw out that for our consideration when we get later in the committee meeting to consider the options. Thank you.
All right. Any other guests, sir? Supervisor Telly-John.
This may be more for Bob, but how long is our opioid dollars going to last to fund this behavior? Or Ken?
I'm faster than Bob. So, 20 years.
20 years?
Yeah, and we've been doing it for 3, so maybe 17 more.
Yeah, so, and the grant that we have, how long is that going to last?
The current SCIP grant. The current SCIP grant runs through September of this year. We'll reapply, but there's no guarantee.
Is there no long-term financing or
we're
funding, I mean?
Yeah, we're continually looking for grant opportunities.
Or do we have to fund it ourselves?
Right.
Or should we?
We can't, for instance, we can't bill Medicaid for someone that's in jail right now. There's legislation that might change some of that, but currently there's no revenue, no funding source unless we find a grant, some partnership, or something that allows us to pay for the staff time.
Or should we be looking at funding it as a county?
Well, it would fall under tax levy.
Yeah, I understand,
yeah.
but if it's important.
It's, I guess, based on a lot of decisions made today as to
Yep.
whether, how that would look, you know.
Supervisor Roan.
I want to share an observation that occurred to me as I'm listening to the two of you talk, and then I have a question for Bob, so if you can, don't sit down. I guess my observation is that, you know, the way we staff, the two of you having different departments, and the way our committee structure is set up really reflects the reality that was truer when the original jail was built. That is that HHS and public protection and judiciary are really kind of two separate worlds, were two separate worlds in many ways, and that's becoming, I think, less and less true. I think, you know, you're highlighting, Sheriff, of the, you know, the mental health, the addiction, the family and domestic. It just dawns on me that, you know, your two worlds collide more than they did 33 years ago. And I just want to make sure that as we're considering this really big step, and I should say, I'm very glad, I know the two of you have a wonderful working relationship. And I think that goes a long way to, you know, a concern that we may be thinking about this through one lens or the other. But I think we really need to be thoughtful about where your two worlds overlap and making sure that as we take this big step that we're accounting for both of these things in some manner, or consciously deciding not to. And so that was my context. My comment or my question to Bob is, you know, there's been a lot of sidebar conversations over many meetings about this comparative with Washington County. It comes up in conversation all the time. And it's gotten me very curious. And for those of you who haven't had the you know, been involved in that, the ratio of incarceration to population, as I understand it, in Washington County is very different than what we experience here. And there's been many theories kind of espoused about why that might be, right? Might be judicial policy in Minnesota, might be law enforcement policy in Minnesota, it might be access in Minnesota to alternative facilities. I mean, it could be a myriad of things. But the ratio is so different that it nags at me that there's something there we don't understand, and it's concerning because that place we don't understand is like a stone's throw from here with characteristics very similar to our own. And so I think no matter what we decide to do here, I think we've got to get to the bottom of understanding this difference, and hopefully it would illuminate what we decide to do, both on the question of the jail, but also on what we need to do to have best practices as it relates to addiction, mental health, and domestic and family. And I was just curious if you had a point of view on it you wanted to share, Bob.
Well, I can say that I asked our deputy director to look into that issue, and she provided a summary of, that pointed out the possible reasons for that difference. Washington County's about 2.5 times the population, I believe, of St. Croix County. Incarceration rates are much higher in Wisconsin than they are in Minnesota. She did a preliminary paper on that, outlining the very things that you're talking about, Supervisor Rowan. The calculation based on that preliminary paper came out to what we would expect for incarceration rates in St. Croix versus Washington, given those differences in judicial policy and law enforcement practices, whatever the differences were. So I need to verify and examine that paper a little more closely, but she did that preliminary work to understand that issue better. And to my first read of it, she did that in that explanation. So once I verified, I can provide, I think, more information specific to that, unless the sheriff has other thoughts about that.
All right, any other questions? Any other questions? Go ahead, Sheriff Knutson.
No, I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate those that have come down into the jail to do that walk with us and a better understanding of some of our successes, but also our challenges. And I appreciate all your time and consideration for this.
And thank you. I would just like to add a couple of comments of my own, because I've sat on them so long. We talk about the population may decline, and I know there are those people who say that'll happen. However, as we've noted, addiction continues to climb. Addiction often breeds crime, and so even though the population may be less, we may need more cells to incarcerate people in. We in Wisconsin, in fact, the United States haven't made marijuana legal yet. Some states have, one state very close to us. That's going to bring a whole new group of addicted people. And they're going to need a place to spend the night. They're going to need a place to cool down. And I'm a little concerned about cutting back, because as Administrator Witt said earlier, the cost of cutting back gets expensive. Now may be the time. And if we don't need it right now, we can always store lawnmowers in it or whatever, because we need that kind of thing too. So that would be my word of caution as we consider this. It's always cheaper today than it'll be the day after tomorrow. And I've seen that happen in my own life many times, and no doubt some of you have too. So, Ken, continue on.
All right. So here's the point where I want to start asking a couple of questions so I can start gathering what I think your current consensuses are. So if you could get your paddles ready. And for Supervisor Shirley Carty, I should have given you a paddle beforehand, but you can use your manual thumb, I guess. So the first question I have is, are you supportive of the jail project? Did the sheriff convince you that, yes, we need to do something with the jail? And so that's the first question. Is that a yes, or is anyone unconvinced? Okay, so I think it's unanimous that we need to do something. So really then my next question is, do you think this is a 2027 project, or are you looking at a 2028 project? So 2027? All right, now 2028, so for those, if it doesn't happen in 2027, would you vote for it to be in 2028? All right, so I think we get near unanimous then once we get to 2028. So that gives me some very good clarification. And then I think the other question that we have, and this will really be decided later, but we've had some discussion then about that extra jail pod. So the project very much needed for the day-to-day operations of the jail with the receiving, the extra cells, those are very much needed. There's the question of what the total population of the county is going to be in the long term, and it's not going to go down. St. Croix County is not going to decrease in population. All of the state projections for our county show us sort of stabilizing in 2040, but if you look at that the chart where the projections were at 2040, we'd be sitting right here about 163 for that peak population. So that's when we sort of flatten, and I don't know what we're going to do, into 2060, 2080. I'm not very concerned about it myself. But we do need to determine that extra pod if that's necessary. So I guess my question then is related to that. So project with or without the pod. So I guess I'll frame the question, full project with the pod would be a yes vote. Supervisor Erickson's a little slow on the paddle. Yeah. All right. So, I mean, for the most part, I think there's a lot of support for doing it as one project, doing it with the pod. So those were very important questions for me to understand so that we're able to put together that project, bring it forward through the many votes that'll still be needed. But I think we have some very good direction. So I really appreciate that input. So from there, Mr. Chair, we can move on to agenda item number 3.
Okay, prior to moving on to agenda number 3, we're going to take a 5-minute break. I've been sitting too long. Thank you.
Yep.
And I believe Terry is going to conduct this portion of it. Thank you, Terry. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Terry Anderson. I'm the Emergency Communications Manager for the county. And we're going to talk about our emergency communications infrastructure upgrade. And I'll try to keep it shorter than the public protection presentation for those of you that were there. The why, I'll just hit the highlights. In the next 5 years, there's a need for an investment of $6 million in our radio infrastructure for emergency communications for routine maintenance, and that's no improvements to the system. The requests from the public safety leaders have expanded, they're asking for expanded capabilities for more channels to communicate, clear coverage and communication inside of newer structures, like the government center, the apartment complexes to the south here, industrial facilities. With the current building codes, when they're wrapping all the HVAC system, you're seeing all this like foil wraps around HVAC and all the Ethernet cabling and that. It's becoming harder and harder for the communication waves to get through into the buildings. We have issues in the government center here currently with the sheriff's office and court security having communications at times. Hudson PD, the fire department, Lakeview, at the big apartment complexes to the south, they have the same problem with that new structure, and they're building 2 more there. So it's becoming harder and harder with the newer buildings that we're having. Network security is a big thing. With nowadays, everything is computerized. All our radio bases, the mobiles and the portables, they become more computerized, if you will. And of course, the interoperability, when we're dealing with the state of Minnesota, with resources flowing back and forth, and of course going county to county, and even if there's a larger scale event where we have had resources go several counties away to assist other emergencies that they are having as well. There are growing needs of the county. Back in 2017, there was 495 first responders. In 2025, there were 621 of them that were in the county. I will add as well, back in 2011, there was 1,157 radios on the communications network, and in 2025, there was 1,986 radios on the system. They've asked for a more robust network. We're asking to go from 5 radio frequencies that we have today to countless talk paths. There'll be a set number of talk paths if we're allowed to move forward with this project. And then we can scale or increase the number of talk paths, channels, if you prefer, for the emergency services to communicate. During incidences that are occurring at the same time, right now there's a congestion on one of the fire channels, so to speak, and even the law enforcement. But there are some channels that the law enforcement can offload, and the fire once in a while can offload during larger incidents. But during grass fire season or weather events, there's a lot of different incidents going, and if one of them turns into a large incident, they need a specific channel to handle that incident, to collaborate with everybody that's there, and to break out in the teams and handle the incident efficiently and safely for them responders. Again, there's a clear signal, better building penetration needed. For those of you that are old enough like me to remember to transition from analog to digital, how you notice that crisp and clean. Even one of the investigators made a comment, because we were kind of going back and forth about using a certain channel during an incident, and he's the one that made that comment. He goes, it's analog to digital. It makes sense. You got to stay on digital. It makes sense. It's a clear, crisper type of transmission that they can rely on. With these additional talk groups as well, it's allowing us at communications level to record all of these talk paths. Right now, there's municipalities that have their PD channels. I call them their private, but they're municipal channels. We don't capture them because they don't touch our infrastructure. In the new world, if we were to go to this, all these additional talk paths that they would have, that they currently have, would be in the new world, but also they could have internal for their local areas like Baldwin, Glenwood, New Richmond, Somerset. They could have event channels for that area. If there was an incident, anybody going to that could change over to that talk path. They would be recorded no matter how many incidents we had ongoing at once. There'd also be for training. That was one of the big asks from the leaders at the various departments. When they do training right now, they talk on the radio on these other channels. It's not recorded. They've asked to have them recorded so they can learn after the fact, review, have a hot wash and learn from that so they can improve on what's going on or learn if they've forgotten anything. Security, the ability to make the network secure. We have had documented cases where there's been intrusion by, we call them a phantom user out there, where they're keying up the radio and it's not one of the public safety people, but somehow somebody has got the frequencies and they're keying up the radio, taking a channel and blocking it. So we've had to bring in some other people to try to help manage that or try to find out who that is. There's also managed access to the radio network. In the new world, there'd have to be a special key in the software programming. If the radio system doesn't recognize your radio, you won't be allowed into the system. More of that security feature that we're trying to go for down the road. There's been an ask for interoperability. As I'd indicated, in Minnesota, they have Armor system. Wisconsin has their own version of Wiscom. They're both 800 systems. Dunn County is currently operating on an 800 system. Pierce and Polk County both operate, like we are right now, strictly on a VHF system, and they are planning on maintaining that and not migrating to any of them other systems. With our goal is to have that capability of somebody that's at ground zero at an incident to be able to have 800, be able to talk on a talk path anywhere in the state, but also have that capability of switching to a VHF channel if they're in another county that's strictly VHF. Have that luxury, I don't want to call it a luxury, but the capability to wherever they are to operate in their world, so to speak. A lot of them right now are depending on us at the communications center to create a talk path or a patch to that other radio system, so they have to hit our infrastructure and go back out on that other county if they're close by their radio infrastructure so they can hear us and communicate back and forth. There's some comments, one of our surveys that the fire chief from Hudson had, and then as well the EMS director from Lakeview EMS, you can see there as well. They had some comments that we thought would beneficial explain our situation, because a lot of it's driving from them in a field out there that are asking for these things. The Hammond Tower. Currently, our tower lease at the current Hammond Tower site expires January of 2030, meaning that to have everything done construction-wise with all the permits that are needed, in 2027, we need to start the ball rolling, so to speak, because one of the permits takes 12 months to complete, the NEPA study, which is a federal permit that has to go through, and it takes into account the DNR, the tribal nations. It goes through a whole series of things that need to be done. The county decided not to renew the current lease that we have at the former tower at the highway shop, and we've been working with a utility company and come to an agreement to construct a new tower in Hammond if we come to that conclusion. Current towers, as you see there in the black, there's 14 tower sites spread out amongst the county, mainly in the municipalities. You'll notice New Richmond, Hudson have more than one tower. That's mainly because of the industrial there, the schools, trying to encompass them. You will or should note that the government center itself is only a receive site. It's not a transmit site, to try to help here inside the government center and the schools across the street. You also notice the red one is the one in Hammond is a new tower. And then also, as we've been lately trying to figure out coverage studies in the 800 megahertz world in trying to fix one of the issues that we have is additional coverage over on the east end, over on Highway 128. We've been working with property that the county already owns for the highway shop. And we've selected that site with our coverage studies to try to fill a gap down there. You will note also that on this map, you'll see the white indicating that that's the highest area, the ridges in the county. In the green, you'll note on the west side down by the St. Croix River and kind of sporadically in the valleys throughout the county. That's a pain in the butt for me to try to provide coverage for the users out in the field there. If you knew all of them, it's a 492 feet separation from down at the St. Croix River on the shore down in Hudson to the highest point over in Glenwood City. Each of the municipalities with it bring a issue. Hudson here, there's 185 feet topography difference just in the topography, so hills and valleys. And it gets worse as you go across the county. In Hammond, there's 78 feet just around the Hammond area to the south. Those of you that know the valleys, the hills, it becomes a problem. There's a shadow that presents when you're transmitting from one tower. That's why the River Falls, Baldwin, Woodville, Roberts, they kind of overlay one another, trying to fill them shadows, so to speak, from one tower, trying to make communication both outbound and inbound. And if you get to Spring Valley, that's a whole nother story. As you can see, there's yellow around Spring Valley by the water and such. But Spring Valley itself has a over 200 feet elevation change within that area around there. And Glenwood City sees 137 feet difference. And so that becomes, as I say, a problem for coverage. But as we're looking at this 800, it's supposed to improve coverage in them areas as well. Now, there's not as much industrial out on the east end. In some of them, those along the interstate, like Woodville, Baldwin, Hammond, Roberts, they're all seeing kind of explosions in their industrial parks. If you haven't been through any of them, I encourage you to do that. There's a lot of businesses out there, and of course, they're being hardened structures being built to house them, so they're becoming more and more difficult to penetrate with our radios. The enhancements to the system. Construction of at least 2 communication towers in the shelters. I'll add that our shelters are concrete shelters. They have the generators, the new ones that we've got have the generators inside. The shelters are built to withstand 150 mile an hour winds, so Mother Nature can't move us around, but also for those people that like to target practice out in the rural areas, the rifle will not penetrate them. We've had microwave dishes that we've removed because someone decided it was target practice on our microwave dishes on our towers. So people do take shots at our infrastructure at times. The infrastructure for the consoles, the actual workstations for the dispatchers, the radios, our plan is in 2032 we have to upgrade them. There's no doubt about that. Right now we have 11. There's 8 of them in Hudson, 3 of them in Baldwin at our backup center. We're proposing to during the upgrade is to go to 12 total, still the 8 at Hudson, and bringing the 4th station that's only half built in Baldwin to 4, so there could be 4 staff at Baldwin if we needed to bug out. And we've had to a couple times during construction here when there was paint fumes that were causing a problem, but also during weather events. It gives us that capability to bulk up, I say. So if there's 8 people in Hudson, I can run people in Baldwin as well. It's invisible to the citizen or the users in the field, whether we're operating in either place. I've also had people, both places working during winter storms where there's low visibility. When I have a staff member that lives out by Glenwood driving all the way to Hudson when it's near zero visibility during a snowstorm at 5 o'clock in the morning, if I can shorten their distance and get them safely to Baldwin, they can operate there, and staff in Hudson, they can operate together because the systems are the same without the public or users in the field knowing that they are at either place. As indicated, the sheriff's office itself and the county entities, the highway department, medical examiner, the jail, all of them, there's over 400 mobile and portable radios alone. Them would all have to be replaced during this migration to this new radio infrastructure. That is included in the cost of this. And also we'd be replacing all the base stations out in infrastructure because they have to change frequencies. So we would change all of them throughout the system. There's approximately 90 of them radio bases out in infrastructure across the board. We'd still maintain our interoperability frequencies that the state requires us to have. So we have them in, so if there's somebody from the outside world that comes in that doesn't operate on an 800 band, we can give them a gateway to get into our system and fully communicate with our first responders, whether it's law enforcement, fire, EMS at any of our locations where we have an incident. Also, as well in there's a refresh of the antennas. They were put in 2016. By 2032, they've hit their life cycle. Mother Nature's not kind to our antennas. We've had an issue at one of them in our tower site we've been dealing with this summer, and we're going through that process. We've had to replace one. It was at the cost of about $6,600 just for the antenna, and then I had tower crew had to climb the tower and replace that as well. So they are not cheap, but Mother Nature as well, there's lightning protection that has to be replaced as well. Every year we do a preventative maintenance on each tower site to make sure lightning doesn't find its way into our computers and such at each of the tower sites. And the little polyphasers are called, they're little gizmo that gives its life should a lightning bolt hit the tower and try finding its way into the tower shelter to protect the equipment. And that's all I have for slides. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Terry? Any questions? Supervisor Rowe.
Can you clarify, Terry, what, if any, obligation this puts on the non-county communication equipment to still be fully interoperable? It wasn't clear to me how all that works.
So it does require, we've been sharing since approximately 2021, 2022 with all the agencies to start considering having dual band radio so they can operate on the VHF world, but also in the 800 since we're having so much from Minnesota inbound, but going over there, but also for the WISCOM users, all the state resources, State Patrol, DNR, and other resources that come from other counties that are on 800 system only, that they have the opportunity to capture that full communication. We've been sharing with them that they should start looking at that, take advantage of grants, start planning financially. Since 2024, we've been sharing with them our plan is to where we are today as I'm talking to you. If we are authorized to move forward, the RFP or B, whatever you want to call it, the request for a bid or proposal, that the successful bidder as an option has to provide a dollar amount for radios, whether it be portable or mobile radios, hopefully to get a discount in numbers. So they can, the option will be for 27, 28, and 29 for that cost to be locked. So whether it's a PD, whether it's a fire or EMS agency, they can hopefully have been either using grant monies they are getting or preparing themselves financially so they can take advantage of them 3 years to get the radios where they need to be to when we go live, hopefully the end of 29 or very early 2030 if we move forward. But they would be responsible for their share of the cost.
So as a follow-up, just so I understand, so you're paving a path for the served communities to align with your strategy on 800 megahertz. But if they don't do that, is there a point in time where they sort of get left in the dust in terms of interoperability with you guys?
Well, to operate on our system, if we are authorized to move forward, by the time we go live again in that very late 29 or early 2030, they would have to migrate to a 800 band radio that they used. Now, we've given them options or explained to them, you can save money, prepare. Our plans are to write that option so you can take advantage of a discount during the 27, 28, 29 fiscal years. There's an option of doing used radios at a discounted price that they could capture that. But there again, as your computer at home, end of life on services, the radio vendors are no dummy. They know as well the end of life support on various radios. It used to be you could get a radio and last 15 to 20 years. As long as it works, I can use it. Well, they're computerized now, so there's versions, there's upgrades coming almost every 4 months, maybe 6 months. But they're end of life of any support to them, so then they become vulnerable to other issues that are out there.
Do you know what the feedback has been so far from the affected communities? I know some of these very small communities, like with volunteer fire departments and whatnot, very shoestring budgets. I mean, are they receptive? Are they planning? What's the feedback been?
Well, most of them realize and have shared that it's a financial hit to them, which I agree it is. There's no doubt about it. We've asked that, again, that they take advantage of the grants. Every year there's a grant that comes out that they could be taking advantage of that. Whether they do or not, that's not my thing. We've talked about it here internally if we cover the cost for them. If we take and buy the radio for them as well, kind of like we purchase it and then sell it to you. But the hope is that this option of getting locking down a price for 27, 28, 29, that number will be lower than what the actual cost is. Several of the vendors have shared that there's a very good reduction in the cost of the radio to help with that if we buy in numbers. Depending on how today's paddles are, our goal is before December to send out another survey to find out what radios they currently are using, the model, the brand, what features they need to get for the new system, but also if they need to purchase radios, how many of them, so we can gather how many numbers of radios would need to be purchased by all the agencies in the county to have that ready for that RFP or RFB when we let it. So the vendors know the dollar amount that they can reduce, because the numbers we're hearing are in our favor.
Supervisor Counter.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple questions on if we went to the 800 megahertz system versus the VHF system. Are you looking then at dual band, or are you looking at specifically just the 800 megahertz? And if so, then how are you looking to, for a time, continue to service and keep the VHF radios in the vehicles until, especially if we have neighboring counties that are, or do you just intend then to do the work through dispatch for those communications? Just looking at some of the logistics of how this would work for the future.
So, how do I want to say this? It's not mandatory that they have to buy a dual band radio, an agency out there. They could buy just another single band 800 to operate on our infrastructure. So they can do that if they want, but then again, they'll have two mobile radios in a apparatus, or they'll have two portable radios. We've also said as well, okay, if your agency can't afford it, you already have radios. You can keep them and then decide, did the apparatus need an 800 radio to communicate with us? Or do a certain number of command staff need a portable radio that can do both bands? So there are ways we're trying to help them out for those agencies that are financially hardship, so to speak. To answer the question is, I'd prefer not to give well, we're going live here, but you have a year or two to change over, because we've already provided them in 2024. That's 6 years of planning. I'd prefer not to do that. We are going to hopefully repurpose one of our current VHF channels as a gateway for those that don't have from outside of our county, to be a gateway that they can get in if they don't have one of our talk paths or not. So that'll help them from outside coming in if they don't. But also we're looking at the interoperability of, we have one, it's a simplex channel, it's not a repeated channel. So if we have an antenna, let's say at Hammond, and they're coming in on one frequency on mobile, they can hit it from up in Amory. We connect that or patch that into one of our talk paths that'll allow them to communicate in to that if they're coming from the outside. Hopefully that answered your question.
Any other questions? Any other questions of Terry? Yes, Barklow.
This might have already been discussed, but I assume the state patrol's on the 800 megahertz?
Yeah, State Patrol's on the Wiscom Generation 1, around 2028, we're told they'll be transitioning to Wiscom 2.0, they call it, but that's what them and the DNR operate on now.
Okay.
They communicate with us, they carry 2 radios, both in the vehicle and on body, and currently their Wiscom in our county doesn't provide coverage. Their sergeant has asked if they get out on foot or got an issue, if they can use our radio system while they're out on foot, which is totally allowed for safety purposes. But yes.
Okay, thanks.
One more call. Oh, excuse me, Supervisor Shirley Carter. Do you have a question?
Thank you, yes. You mentioned the current tower lease expires. Would that mean that we would be replacing all towers or just adding in the new ones that you indicated?
Just the one at the Hammond location. That lease expires in January of 2030, and the committee voted to let that one expire and we move.
Okay, thank you.
I thought it turned on. Any other questions? Okay, if not, Ken, your turn.
Yeah, well, I think on this project, I don't know if Terry was as convincing to you guys as he was to me, but if you want to maybe give a paddle on this project, whether you were convinced or not convinced. See how convincing Terry is? Look at that. Unanimous, Terry.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I mean, a third of his project you're going to have to do because it's maintenance anyways, so. From here then, we're going to move on to the list. We did print off on paper for you, hopefully in a font large enough that you can read. And Dustin's going to go through that list. So Dustin's going to pause at the end of each project and ask for a vote. We'll jot those down. But that's where these paddles really come in handy. But by all means, if you have questions along the way, stop. Dustin will probably be able to answer most of them, but if not, we have our other staff in the room here that will be able to answer any question that you have. So take it away, Dustin.
All right. Thank you. Good morning still, everybody. We've been through 2. We got about 50 more to go, so we should be home by supper time. So a lot of these projects are routine projects, replacing equipment, replacing vehicles, things like that. There will be some projects that are more one-time, one-off ones that are added for new things, new equipment, remodels, whatever it might be. Any changes, if you haven't seen it at your committee meetings, any changes are highlighted in red on here. So we might have changed the amount, might have changed which year we put it into, or it's a new capital expense item. So we'll just start off at the top of the list. The first category is our facilities department. And the first item is our building, remodeling, furniture, and plumbing. Taylor has $200,000 budgeted for each year, 27 to 31. This is, just as it says, any small remodel projects, furniture purchases that we need, plumbing repairs, things like that. Any questions or does everybody want to vote for thumbs up, thumbs down to the?
You know, yeah, typically we would. I mean, if you prefer not to, I mean, most of the items are routine. I would expect they'd all be unanimous, but.
I recommend that we take the facilities category and lump it into one category of thumbs up, thumbs down.
That's an excellent idea. Very good.
All right, the next one to facilities is our fleet vehicle replacement. This covers all the county vehicles in the fleet, with the exception of the sheriff's department. So anything from our vehicles to drive back and forth for employees, parks of vehicles, things like that. The 2 changes for 29 and 2030, excuse me, are due to passenger vans, and then also a parks dump truck in 2030. So that's the reason for the increase in those 2. So if you guys have any questions as I go along, just pop in. Otherwise, I'll kind of move from one to the next. Yep. The next one down is equipment, electrical equipment. So again, it's kind of similar to the first one. He has $65,000 budgeted each year for any expenses that come up, any upgrades that need to be made for those categories. The next one is HVAC replacement, $125,000 each year. Again, that's just to replace any aging equipment. regarding the HVAC. Next is safety and security at $45,000 each year. That's just, obviously, as it says, getting in through the doors. The next one down is the parking lot patch and seal. Every few years, we have budgeted about $50,000 for parking lot replacements or repaving or resurfacing. The next two are scheduled for the Government Center South Edition, and then in 2030, the Government Center again as well. A new folder inserter machine. This is for the clerk of courts. This just helps them mail out their notices quickly. And that's replaced every 5 years, so that'll be recurring entry every 5 years. The new parking lot for the DD building, that's in Richmond, so that's a separate line item. It's not going to be recurring. That's a one-time expense for the $220,000. It's budgeted in '27, I think primarily because of when the funding for our bond issue is going to be. We kind of put the big projects in '27 if we can. The next three items are kind of tied in with the jail project. If it gets postponed, we'd probably push these items back to whenever the jail project is going to be put in, whether it's 27 or 28. The first one is replacing the Government Center West driveway. We're going to kind of tailor plans to kind of time that in with when we do the jail project. The same with the jail roof. So the roof is the original 1993 roof. As it's gotten older the last few years, Taylor's had to do some repairs on it to prevent any issues. So it doesn't need to be replaced, but again, it's one of those things that makes sense to do when the jail expansion goes into place. And then the next line item is the Huber carpet removal and floor polishing. That's just, again, an upgrade to the jail area down there. And then the last one of facilities is the new KIP project item for this year. It's out in it's the fiscal 31 budget, so it's a ways out, but we're just kind of planning ahead. If some of you are here, some of you are new, but we were attempting to get a 5th Circuit Court judge, I think in March, somewhere around there. It looks good, but it didn't quite get to the Senate floor, I believe. So we do have a need. There's a high need for a 5th judge. So we want to plan ahead and get that in place. It makes us look better when we do go to the Senate to try and get a 5th judge to already have the courtroom in place. So this would be remodeling one of the upstairs courtrooms to match the downstairs, match the look, match the technology, get everything in line with the first floor. And then also on the back side of it, get the jail, the inmate transfer safety in the back side of the judge, or in the back side of the courtroom. All right, so the facility is as a whole, is there anything that anybody wants to talk about or call out separately before we take a paddle vote?
Yeah, let's take a paddle vote on this one. I don't see any questions.
All right, thank you. We'll do the same in the IT department, information technology. The first one is the IT recurring projects. So these are things like replacing the servers, things that need replacing in IT that have worn out their useful life and are no longer maybe supported or no longer functioning. $150,000 each year in John's budget. The next one is the court's AV upgrade. We moved that up just a year. Again, it's just replacing the aging AV equipment in the courtrooms. These are the upstairs courtrooms 5 through 7. And the cost of that is $500,000. The next line item is the county data storage replacement. So this is, again, just replacing current aging technology. It has a life expectancy of 7 years. At 28, it'll be at 8 years already. So it's, again, something that needs to be replaced. The cost of that is $200,000. The next line item for 28 and 29 is $250,000 each year to replace the jail and health center security cameras. The next line item is a recurring line item. So every 5 years, roughly, we replace either the copy machine in the clerk of courts or the district attorney's office. So we just alternate who needs replacement those years. And then the last line item is a cell signal repeater for the service center. The cell coverage inside the service center, inside the building itself, as Terry kind of mentioned before, inside some of these brick buildings, it's hard to get coverage. So a cell signal repeater will help in there. A lot of their employees do a lot of work on their mobile phones, so it's much more convenient to be able to hear and not have to go to certain areas of the building. and that is a $75,000 cost in 2030.
That brings us to the end of the information technology. Any questions on that section? Any questions? If not, the paddle vote. Thank you.
All right. The next up is the county clerk's budget. So she has $40,000 scheduled in 2029 for election software and server upgrade. This is something that every 5 to 7 years needs to be replaced, and so that's coming up due in 2029.
Questions? Questions? Paddle vote.
Our highway department has no request. HHS request is just a single line item for the ADRC. Every year we replace a certain number of vehicles in the ADRC department. Originally, we actually lowered the 2027 budget item from, I think it was a bus at first, and now it's just a van to be replaced. So that's down to $55,000. The next year, we are going to replace one of the vans, and that's why it's increased to $145,000. And then you can kind of see the trend, just a regular vehicle, a smaller van, and then the bigger passenger van, and then the smaller van again.
Questions? Paddle vote. Excuse me, I missed your.
You know, this isn't a specific question to this item, but I'm just wondering if we could address each area like a consent agenda. And so we essentially say, you know, if there's anyone wants to pull anything out for further comment, that otherwise we just then go ahead and vote.
That's the way I would think that if I asked for questions, that would it would accomplish the very same thing. So I think we'll continue as we're going.
All right. Do we want to vote on the HHS ADRC vehicles?
Yes. Paddle vote on HHS.
All right.
Thank you.
Next is our law enforcement department. The first up is the sheriff's squad cars. And you'll notice that there's a $100,000 increase starting in 2028. That's due to the additional deputies that were added. So I think it's about a couple years ago now. So we just have additional fleet vehicles replaced. About every 3 years, we replace the sheriff's squad vehicles. So we'll sell the old one and purchase a new one. The next line item is a new line item. This is to help move from an operating expense to our capital project expense to our KIP. So the sheriff's investigator command vehicles, currently we are leasing those. And so that's on the operating side. We're instead deciding to move this to the KIP and purchase the vehicles. And then once, probably about 4-year life on these ones, we'll sell those and purchase a replacement vehicle. In the long run, we think it'll actually save a little bit of money versus leasing, as well as getting it from the operating side, freeing up some money there, and being able to spend it on the capital side.
Before we turn the page, do we want to answer questions on that before we move on? Once we turn the page, we turn the page. Any questions? Any questions? Let's paddle that also up to this point.
Okay. Those 2 items.
Move on. Okay, flip over.
Thank you. Continue down, the next line item is the sheriff's night vision. Again, this is just the one we moved up from 2029 to 2028. $147,000, and this is for 14 sets of night visions for the first responders for critical incidents, just for safety and being able to better respond to those incidents. The next line item is $40,000 for the sheriff's forensic server replacement. So these are items that are coming to the end of life, not being serviced anymore, so we need to replace them. The next line item is the sheriff's boat replacement. So it's a boat and trailer. I think it's an expensive trailer, probably. That's why it's so expensive there. But $422,000 for the boats. This is to replace basically the river boat. The current one is still functional, but it is aging. The motor is going to need servicing soon. So we're looking to purchase a new boat for the river. The good part about this is it's, I think, 75% covered by a grant. So if you scroll to the bottom, the last page where we kind of get to our funding, you'll see this $316,000. That is the 75% of the cost of the boat. We won't receive that until we actually purchase and receive the boat. So that would be on the next year's KIP. But again, we only are responsible for 25% of the cost of the boat. So the other 75% is grant funded.
Could I ask a question about that? Excuse me. Jerry?
Certainly. Yes, Dan.
I just wanted to be clear because I read the detail on the schedule. So it talked about how there was there is a boat that was originally a DNR or some other smaller boat, and then there's a main boat, and so now you're buying a new boat. So which boat is leaving, the little fishing boat or the one that you currently have as a main boat? That's what I was just trying to understand.
Yeah, great question. And I'm Captain Tim Kufis with the Sheriff's Office. So currently we have two boats. One is a 26-year-old Lund that is a fishing boat with lights on it and a radio. We would like to decommission that boat. And the idea behind the request for this capital improvement, or this KIP item, it was timely with the grant awarding to cover 75% of it. And so while we plan to replace our river patrol boat with this request, and while our current river patrol boat still has value, we would like to sell or trade in to replace our smaller 26-year-old boat. Does that make sense?
So what you're saying is you're getting rid of the fishing boat?
We're getting rid of the fishing boat.
That's what I thought, but when I read it, it didn't come that through to me, so thank you.
Yep. All right, thank you.
And you know what they say about boats, your best day of the boat is the day you buy it and the day you sell it.
You're talking to a guy who just bought a boat last year? We could spend the rest of the day talking about that. Goodbye.
The next few items are, again, items that are.
I'm just,
sorry.
yeah, I just want, just to clarify, so are you saying that there is a grant offsetting element that besides this, so really the net is really a quarter of this?
Correct, yeah, the net is $100 and some thousand will be our net cost of it all. At the end of the day, we're gonna end up with 2 new boats, so it'll be a good day.
The next few items are replacement items for aging equipment. The dash and body cam replacement in 2030 for $400,000. So that's replacing all of our dash and body cameras for the Sheriff's Department. Squad radar units replaced, so all the radar units that are in the squad. And then taser replacement. In the past, these were coming out of the operating expense, but now they're being funded by the capital expense. It's replacing aging taser equipment, either all at once or terminating out over the next 5 years. The next one is a Trimble forensic scanner. So this is for crime scenes, I believe. So this reconstructs crime scenes, saves all the data for it, makes it much easier for the department to save all that. The Cradle Point squad car replacements. These are changing the 4G routers to 5G routers. So as the technology updates, the squads have to get updated as well. And then the next 3 items out in 2031 are new items to the KIP this year. First one is $50,000 for emergency response unit armor. So this is body armor for the 12 deputies who are on the emergency response team. Handgun mounted optics. This is, again, order 65 handguns, optics for the 65 handguns to help improve safety for officers responding. And then the last one is drone fleet replacements. As the technology's gotten better, the Sheriff's Department has used drones more and more. So they're adding to their fleets and the capabilities for thermal, for searches, things like that. Is there anything that anybody wants to call out on?
Any questions? Yes.
A quick question. I was just curious, dash and body camera replacement, they go bad over time?
That I'm not sure
of. So when we got the current round of body cameras, we entered into a 6-year contract with at the mid-year point, or the midpoint, 3 years, we refreshed all of the equipment. So we'll be running up against that 6-year window, end of life, kind of like anything that we have nowadays. The companies are ending service on some of their equipment, and they're kind of forcing your hands into buying new. So, yep, it's a refresh of kind of our current technology. So we'll have the base, but we still have to replace all the cameras.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Time for the paddle? All in favor?
Okay.
Thank you.
The next one is the Corrections Department. We've obviously already talked about the first line item, so we'll go down to the second. It's in red because they had received a new estimate on the jail dishwasher. The price increased to $55,000. This is again one that recurs every handful of years, just to replace the aging equipment. The next line item is the jail body scanner replacement. The sheriff kind of touched on this earlier. This is to help prevent anything being brought into the jail from the inmates that are coming in. It'll scan the inmates, I believe, without even having to physically be near them or something, it sounds like, right? So yeah, it'll discover all the contraband and prevent that from getting through.
Okay, questions? Any questions?
I think the main question on this one is whether your vote's including the $46 million in 2027 for the jail. From my questions earlier, I know a majority probably still supports it in 2027 rather than 2028, but I have to have a 3/4 vote to do a bond issue. So I look at a supermajority requirement in order to place that. So I'm going to move that project to 2028 on the list, just so everyone's understanding the reason why I would make that move. But based upon the feedback, and you'll still have a couple of chances to vote on this yet. So today we're gathering all the input. That's the input I've gotten on the jail project. It'll go to the admin committee in the form of a resolution. That resolution will go in front of the September county board, which is your actual vote then on that. But that's my understanding as of today of what you guys are looking at and why.
Supervisor Fiddler.
And I'll just reiterate the point I made earlier, that it's $46 million that's in here, $10 million of it for the new pod, but with the other two improvements we're making to the jail, we exceed all capacity limits through 2040 without the pod. Without the pod, it's $36 million. So we may want to ask the question, do we want to have the pod, which provides overcapacity way into the future, or do we want to save $10 million?
All right, any other questions, any other comments?
Do we want to pose that question?
Do you want to pose that as a question?
Yeah, I had asked that question earlier. My vote count on that was 14 to 4. And so 4 were in favor of reducing that extra pod. So at that point in time, it wasn't that supermajority limit that I would have.
I listen, I mean, we all approve the project going forward. We all want the jail expanded. We all want a substantial expansion. We want to cover the future handily. I think I would have phrased it a little differently when I was asking the folks the question. Do you want to reach way over capacity of what we need for the next generation, or do you want to do it in addition, spend $10 million to super increase the capacity? And I think we would have said, no, we don't want to waste $10 million, but we want to have the jail expansion. We want to meet all the needs that the sheriff has said and the gentleman from the Department of Corrections has talked about, but we don't need the extra pod for at least well, we're way over capacity in 15 years. Why would we spend $10 million more dollars?
Yes, Supervisor Rowan.
I guess my question, it's a little bit of an academic question at the moment with the move of the capital expenditure into 2028, I think. And the reason I say it is I'm anticipating just a lot more discussion about the actual makeup of the design and the details in regard to what makes up the 46 million. I'm not sure we need to make the decision about the pod independently from that, but rather put in the whole conversation that I anticipate we'll have about what is this project actually going to be when we vote to approve it next year.
Does that make sense, Administrator Witter?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, or I'm fine with you guys answering the question now, but either way, I do need the answer eventually.
Yes, Carlson.
Yeah, it looks like we'll have a lot more than we need. But how much does it help with the separation of the classifications to have the extra pod also? Even if we don't fill it over 80%, because that's what they recommend, it's still nice to have the extra space. But I'm not sure if we need that extra space, so I would like to hear that. Does the sheriff want it? Is it useful for separation, or don't we need it for that either?
Well, it would be useful for separation. Again, those receiving cells, initial coming in, booking, then to court. And then if they stay, that does help us for those long-term inmates. I know there's a population that is 1 to 4 days, but there's another large group that are here longer than that that do need to be moved around. So.
Yeah, I believe I would be for doing the pod. It's $10 million, but it helps with separation, and maybe we will grow more than expected. And then it would cost even more to do it later if we needed it.
Supervisor McIntosh.
Is there a possibility of the extra pod being either kind of semi-built out or with the option for being repurposed if we don't meet that population growth?
I think they had suggested lawnmower storage, which I wasn't a fan of. If you don't build the pod, we absolutely will build a blank wall where you're going to knock out the door to add the pod. I mean, we will plan for that pod expansion if it's not built at this point in time. If it is built and not needed, though, I mean, in the short term, no, there's probably no other use because it's within the jail proper. So a lot of security requirements.
Thinking about some of those HHS programs that we may want to include to supplement, is that something that could be explored, or that's just kind of very separate right now?
Yeah, I think they'd be pretty separate. I don't know how you would utilize extra pod space for anything but housing inmates.
Supervisor Rice.
I agree with the spirit of Chair Fiedler's recommendation, but I also agree that we were giving ourselves another 12 months to look at this. And I think on the table is the extra pod as part of that exploration. So I'd like to see us just go forward. But I think $10 million is nothing to blink at. I think we can give ourselves a little bit more time to look deeper at that. So.
Well, and I just had a quick question for the sheriff. What percentage of the inmates that are coming in, Sheriff, now are there 4 to 8 days? It would typically go into the receiving cells. Number of folks that are there today, they'll be there for 4 to 8 days, percentage-wise, roughly.
About 75%.
So an overwhelming percentage are there for a very short time, not a long time. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions? So when we vote for it, we would still be voting for?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, when this comes to the admin committee, I'm moving 46 million from 27 to 28. The other two items, though, you're free to vote on right now.
Okay, and because has been said, we're a long ways from driving the first nail, and a lot can change between now and then, and it can be changed also. I mean, this is not set in concrete or in iron bars yet. Okay? All right, paddle time.
All right.
Thank you.
Moving down to emergency communications. So a lot of these are, again, replacement items, things that are coming to the end of useful life and need to be updated. Well, the first one is audio log recorder system. That is $100,000 in 2029. The next one is the portable radio cache update. So that is $100,000 in 2030. And then the red for the next line item for $70,000 each year, that was just due to recent increased costs that we've seen. So these are the DC battery power replacement for the communication tower sites. This is just so through power outages, we remain up and running without a delay. The next one is a radio console upgrade hardware for $120,000 in 2029. And in 2030, another upgrade for the 911 system replacement. That is $180,000. In 2029, a UPS replacement for the Hudson 911 and Baldwin 911 centers. That is $85,000. So again, it's backup in case of power outages. And then obviously the next one you've talked about. The last one is a mobile command vehicle refresh in 2030. So this is the emergency vehicle for mobile commands, just updating the electronics in it. It's, I believe, roughly 10 years old. Just kind of need a refresh on that. Any questions on anything?
All right, questions. Any questions on this section? Yes.
Quick, so we have a range here, about 13 to 19 million and so forth. Is that just an estimate of the whole project, or does that include possible cutbacks in some areas?
No, the project increased from 13 to 19 million. Last year, when it was on the KIP, it was listed at 13 million. The
I see.
project is 19 million now.
Okay.
I think
okay.
Terry was terrified to tell me that number this year.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, Supervisor Delaney.
Thanks. How old is the mobile command vehicle?
So we took ownership of it December of 2020. It was built during COVID. So all that electronic equipment is needing an update the end of life of some of the programs in the system.
Okay. Supervisor Rowan.
Terry, before you leave, sorry, I didn't think to ask this earlier, but when we were talking about compatibility with municipalities and the move to 800 megahertz, you mentioned something about a scenario where the county would purchase those radios and then resell them to the municipality. Did I get that right?
That was discussed in part of our discussion process with Administrator Witt on what solutions for them smaller departments. And it was, after our discussion, it was determined that instead of us being like the seller to them, that during the process of that RFP or RFB to get that discounted price, they could buy strictly from the vendor exactly what they want.
Okay, so the 19 million doesn't include anything in regard to that scenario?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So I would just maybe, and I made this point earlier, so forgive me for reemphasizing, but I would just encourage us to have a full court press on communications with the municipalities. They're all in capital planning season as well. And I'm just envisioning the nightmare that could result if the majority of those municipalities don't align with the capital expenditure required to become compatible 3 years or 2 years down the road, whenever this is put into play. The last thing you want is the chaos created by having non-compatible radio systems and finding it out in an incident. That's what happened at 9/11, and we don't want that to happen here. So if somebody isn't already doing it, we need a full court embrace with the municipalities to make sure they're planning appropriately to do this.
Agreed. Every quarter we are updating them as to the status. Like later on today or tomorrow, I'll update all the emergency services, your vote today that we got in concept moving forward with it yet. Several of them have shared with their boards, their commissions, and we've asked them if they need us to come and discuss, share information, answer questions. We're open to do that, and we've done that numerous times and will continue to do that.
Very good. Any other questions? Any other questions? If not, it's paddle time again.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we have a couple in the medical examiner's office. These are new additions for this upcoming 2027 fiscal year. First one is an XL electric body and casket lift. This is for use at the DD building for moving bodies around in storage. I don't know if you've seen Tina, but it's hard for her to move a 300-pound person by herself, so this will help with safety there. The next line item is the striker power load. This is for a piece of equipment that we bought this year. We need to upgrade in order to use with our new van that was purchased. I believe the height of the van isn't high enough, so we need the power loader, and it'll also help with safety, hopefully reduce any workers' comp claims for getting the decedents into the vans.
Any questions on that short section? Any questions? If not, battle time again.
All right, we're nearing the end. The last is the Parks Department. The first line item is a recurring line item. It's for equipment, things such as mowers, skid steer attachments, things like that. $35,000 he has budgeted each year. The next one is ongoing maintenance of county parks. We moved this up to coincide with the repaving of Rustic Road 3. So they're going to do that out at Glen Hills. A lot of times when we do these repavings or for parking lots, we use our county highway department. So since they're already out there, it makes sense to have them do it at that time. Well, the next line item is one that's been going on for a while. These are additional phases to extend the bike loop trail from North Hudson all the way to the Highway 35 river crossing. So in 2029, we've budgeted $2.2 million, 2030, $1.6 million roughly. And again, you'll notice, excuse me, towards the bottom, these are offset slightly by offset by grants as well. So 75% or 80%, is it 80%, right? 80. So 80% for 2029 is covered by grants. It's slightly less in 2030 because some of the planning isn't covered by the grant. So I think it's about 70% is covered. So again, this is the full cost, but you're offsetting 1.7 million against the 2.2, and then 2030, you're offsetting 1.1 million against the 1.6 million. The next line item is for future continued Eckert Bluffland developments. So again, 600,000, 500,000 the next 2 years. This is for additional trails that we continue to build, bathrooms, shelters, things like that as we develop that land out there. In 2029, 250,000 for a 15-site RV campground for larger RVs. If you've been out camping at all, I know campers are getting much bigger and bigger. The Glen Hills campground is a little small at times for some of these big campers. I've been there myself multiple times. So this is to add additional camping space for the big RVs. The county dam maintenance, that's a recurring line item for any dams that need maintenance. So every, I believe, 5 years, we put $50,000 towards the dam repairs. Probably heard enough about dams this week, but there's a little bit more here. The parks playground upgrade. So this is for 2 upgrades at, I believe, Glen Hills and Homestead Park. So the plan is 2030 for $150,000 worth of playground equipment.
All right, any questions on the parks section? Any questions? Yes, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Chair. I have questions about 2 lines. The first one, the bigger numbers, the the pedestrian plan. When I read the detailed pages again, I couldn't understand what it was saying because it talks about phase 2, 3, and 4, and it seemed like they kind of literally go back and forth if you read them together. So if you could just explain that a little bit, that'd be helpful for me.
Yep. So phase 2 goes from where phase 1 left off up to County Road V. That one we did receive a TAP grant for. It's $943,000 for the total project cost, I believe. Then phase 3 goes from County Road V up to 125th Avenue by Big Guy's Barbecue there. That one we got a carbon reduction grant for. So all of these grants are basically 80%. And so those 2 phases we are in design phase on. And then we've got preliminary approval, but we haven't got the actual award. But for phase 4, which would go from Big Guy's Barbecue all the way up along Highway 64 and connect over to County Road E, which would then tie into the actual loop. So that's the reason for the one that we added in 2030.
So the 2029 is phase 2 and 3. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now it's a little more clear. Is there any reason that they are pushed out that far, given that phase 1 was done? Was it just a matter of timing, of design, and all those things?
Yep, so the design, so those TAP grants, those are federal funds, and that, but they're administered through the DOT at the state level. So like right now, and that we just kind of got this award for the grant, but the earliest that we could start on it, because the feds won't have those funds allocated till 2030.
Okay,
There's a potential that funds from 2029 could be moved up, but we haven't got approval for that yet.
got it, got it. And the other question I have is about the county dam maintenance, because when we had the discussion about the whole drawdown thing, there was comments about work that'll need to be done on the dam on Lake Malibu and St. Croix. Is that in this area? Because you talked about the dam would need some maintenance or repairs.
Yep. So there is some emergency equipment upgrade, and that was like $10,000-$12,000, which would be the county share. I haven't heard from the city that that's moving forward yet, though. But they put that out there for kind of preliminary numbers. This money here is mainly for the 10 earthen dams that we have over by Glenwood City, because there's, alarms that we need to replace. We need to take and brush them, all that kind of just general small maintenance.
So the Lake Malibu emergency equipment you mentioned is because of the dollar amount, it probably doesn't even get on here. Is that it?
Correct.
Or it's more of an unknown right now because of having to work with the other municipalities?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, let's paddle vote.
All right. Thank you.
And thank you. Ken, you're up next.
I'd kind of asked my questions beforehand, so I think I know what the answers are going to be. Just as a last note on the bottom of this page, we look out at our 5-year plan, and the ending fund balance in the KIP you can see is negative $5 million by the end of 2031. So some action we took at the last county board meeting where we changed the fund balance policy specifically regarding the healthcare campus. That's going to be a new revenue source coming into here then. So I'm hoping that that's going to address that declining fund balance. We've been very successful when we first implemented this in 2016, this KIP methodology of being able to fund the small projects, these vehicle replacements and ongoing building maintenance with cash on hand. So we've always been successful in having an additional fund balance to go in there to do that. And so outside of the big building projects, I think that should continue to work in our favor. All right, let's see. Here we go. All right, so as I laid out beforehand for you, what our options were, I think what I'm hearing is it's not going to be A, because we don't want to start the jail project in 2027. I think it's going to be 2028. But one bond issue or two bond issues is the question I think I have for you then. So any thoughts on this overall concept?
Any thoughts? Could you explain the difference between those? That's what you're going to ask.
Yep. Well, yes, I was just going to, go ahead, Ken.
So there's multiple steps in a bond issue. So it's a lot of work for the finance department. So I'm really just concerned about Dustin's, time. But the first thing that we do to start a bond issue is authorizing resolution. So we go to the county board and we say, can we borrow up to what dollar amount for what projects? So what we would ask for is up to $70 million, up to, doesn't mean you borrow all 70, up to, and then for what? We'd say for capital projects. We leave it open-ended so we can spend it on anything on that list, really, which helps me with a different issue I can get to at the end. So that's the initial start of a bond issue. That authorizing resolution is good for 5 years. That requires a supermajority vote by the county board. So I have to have 16 or 15 votes yes. If somebody's absent, that counts as a no. I have to have 15 yeses by the county board to pass that initial resolution. So once that initial resolution is passed, approval of the budget where the KIP project gets placed into a current year, the sale of the bonds at a future board meeting becomes a majority vote. So the vote comes down to a much more easy hurdle to get over. So what we would do then is, under option B, is we would authorize up to $70 million in that initial vote, which means, yes, we've committed that a majority of the board can finish these projects within the next, few years. You're not approving the jail in 2027, so that takes that off the table. So the other big project, the $20 million for the communications, that's still in there. The first year of either of these projects is design. So we would float the cash in 2027 for the design of the communications project. And then early in 2028, given that you do vote in 2027 to do the jail project in 28, we would then sell the bonds in 2028. And so we would be able to right-size that bond issue then up to the $70 million based upon, we have a full design now of the communications. Our Terry's number is good. We've started the design on the jail. We probably don't have real great numbers, but we would have updated our projections on that. So we can right-size the bond sale. The bond sale in 2028 then means our first payments aren't until 2029. So if you looked at that scale, we did buy ourselves really 2 years then of delayed payments. So as our current debt payments continue to step down, we're getting some taxpayer relief there that will help offset this new bond issue. So that's really the steps involved in the process, and so you'll have multiple votes along the way to get us there.
You had a question, Supervisor?
Well, just an observation. Good news and bad news. Just a tremendous amount of credit to Ken and his staff for putting this together, being very creative in how we could approach these major financial decisions. And in the past, I think this board and Ken have done a tremendous job of being very aware of what we're imposing on the taxpayer. And Ken is very conscious of that, as is the staff, as is the board. That's the item we hear about all the time. We've had, I think, a record of at least a dozen years, Ken, where we've lowered the mill rate every year. Lowered the mill rate every year. This is phenomenal in Wisconsin. We're one of the lowest mill rates in the state, top 5, I think. And it would be nice to continue that trend. Ken has pointed out that we will not continue that trend if we approve what we've talked about today in its macro sense, okay? We're going to be jumping the mill rate relatively substantially, 10%. So in relative to another downturn of even 0.001%, we're going to be raising it 10%. I mean, we just have to look at the big picture. And I know we'll have separate votes on this in the future, but I would almost ask the administrator, and this doesn't need a vote or anything, but please consider coming back to the administration committee with what it would take to lower the mill rate 0.001%. If we were to do with some of these projects, what would it take to continue to this trend of a dozen years to lower the mill rate? And it would be cuts or other revenue sources, right? I mean, that's obviously what it is. So when you come back to us with the results. I would just suggest you come back to us with the results of what we've raised our paddles for today, but also with what it would continue to drop the taxes on the taxpayer. Thank you.
The good news, though, is that since 2029 is the first payment, the mill rate wouldn't go up until then, so past your current terms.
That is good news.
Good plan, thank you. Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes.
Ken, I noticed there were a couple of points during the detailed capital itemized discussions where the presenter noted that you're moving philosophy on some items that had heretofore have been considered operating expense items, you're taking a capital approach to it, and you certainly got the flexibility to do that. But I'm wondering if you have a rule of thumb about when you would, for future, when you would do that and when you would not do that. I mean, there is a penalty you pay ultimately for continuing to do that, I think, in terms of, you know, you're just moving anyway.
Yeah.
I think you got my question.
Yeah, the capital project plan has defined parameters. For one thing, it has to be an asset over $5,000 in value. So, I mean, you couldn't move personnel into the KIP. You can't do other things. But the vehicles that they were leasing, you know, I've been trying to convince them for years, really, to switch those over to the KIP, because I think we'll save money versus leasing. Anytime you lease, whoever you're leasing them from is making a profit. If we buy the vehicles off of the state contract and then resell them in 4 years, you know, that's the best model that we've identified for purchasing and reselling to have the lowest total cost for us. So it doesn't happen very often. These vehicles are kind of a one-off.
Thank you. So just kind of circling back to the mill rate and bringing it down, I certainly don't want to bring it up per se. You know, everybody wants to have affordable taxes, but I'm of perhaps a younger generation here, and my whole life has been cut, and then you don't have the services anymore. So I just want to make sure that we're considering a strong county, maybe perhaps a flat mill rate versus a decreased mill rate. Again, I don't want to increase anything, but making sure that we're leaving a healthy county behind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if you look at the 10 plus years, I think it's 13 or 14 we're at, of decreasing mill rates, the increase that I mentioned on here, going from 259 to 287, you lose two years worth of the decreases. So you've gone back 2 years. We've had 13 years of decreases. We've gone back up 2, and then we'll continue to go back down again. And so it's a blip, and I get Chair Fiedler's position that it's nice to continue that streak. And, you know, I'll get creative. We'll see what we can do to maintain that streak. But at the end of the day, it's one blip up and then a continued decrease. So.
Yes, Ms. Forstner.
You know, following up on that, just to clarify, so it seems to me that the .275 really is option A. And then if we do option B, that it may not be 2.275, so it's going to be a lower number.
Yeah, it would be a slightly lower number, correct?
Okay, yeah, so if we could get that, you know, clarification too.
Sure.
You know, thank you.
The value, the $110 per $400,000 home though, that doesn't change because that's just the total cost. The reason that it wouldn't be 287 under option B is because our debt payments are currently decreasing every year. They step down. And so adding the debt in 27 compared to 29 when that first payment happens has a difference in what the total rate is. That's the very thin line in between these two. That's where it's at. And a lot of that can be in the structuring also. I mean, there's going to be an uptick, but how I structure these, I have a lot of flexibility on, and that's going to have an impact also.
Any other final questions? Yes.
And would it be possible, because I think better graphically than I think textually, would it be possible for the admin committee meeting next week to have a debt timing curve, have debt timing curves that align with the 3 options specifically that were laid out? And we could stare at those?
For next week, no, we've already published the agenda, but for the August meeting, yes.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Yes, Supervisor Rice.
Could you expand on option C?
Yep. Option C is, we're going to split the 2 projects, which I think we've kind of already talked about. So we're going to do the communications project first, committed to that project. The jail project, we're going to do at a later date, probably 2028. But we're going to split the bond issues. We're just going to go ahead and authorize $20 million now to do the communications, and then push down the road the other $46 million for the jail project once the board has finally approved that.
So am I understanding that that's the direction we're leaning in, or are you recommending B?
Well, I'm recommending B. I guess the reason is, one, is I prefer to do one bond issue rather than two bond issues. So a bond issue has a cost with the bond advisor and corp counsel review, outside counsel review, of about $100,000 to $150,000. So I want to avoid that additional cost if I can. If I know I'm doing two big projects, I'd rather do one big bond issue for those two projects.
So the follow-up to that then is, obviously there's a cost.
Yep.
In the big scheme of things, it's nominal.
Yep.
Sorry, Dustin, but nominal. And at the admin committee meeting where Eilers presented, we learned about the cost of capital.
Yep.
And that between inflation and interest rates, this is going to be on the more expensive side bond issues than ones we've done in the past. Is there any terms of timing, if we were to split these up, that we might, depending on where interest rates are a year from now, a year and a half from now, have some benefit?
Yeah, so I believe that the interest rates are going to go down over time. I think they're kind of at the highest point they're going to be right now, or at least they were a year ago at their highest point. So I think they've come down, and I think they'll continue to come down. That's how come I'm recommending delaying the bond sale, whether it's one bond sale or two bond sales, really until 2028, because I only foresee them coming down a little bit further. And that's just, a guess, though, whether rates are down or increasing. If rates were increasing, you'd want to move it up. You'd want to do the bond issues earlier. That's what we did when we did the government center project. We did an $80 million bond issue, but we did it before we even started the design of it. We did that because we knew rates were going to go up, and we've saved over $10 million in interest expenses by locking in a low interest rate before rates spiked up. So that was a really good move by the county board to do it at that time. This one's just the opposite, where I want to delay as long as I can before I do the bond issue. So you can hedge your bet if you want to do two bond issues. So you could do the 20 million at one point in time, sort of lock that rate in, and then see where rates are going. So it's just a different strategy, but
That's for Eileen.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Any other final questions? Any other comments from you? Oh, excuse me.
So just to clarify, option B, you thinking that's the best way to go?
Well, yeah, the other thing option B does, and I totally get hedging the bet and doing two bond issues. The other thing option B does is it gives that authorization where the jail project's in there. So it gives reassurance to the staff that, yes, the project is going to get done. It only requires a majority vote at that point in time. So if you only approve the 20 million up front and you wait on the other $46 million for the jail, I need a 3/4 vote again for that jail vote in order to authorize that debt. So it just sort of leaves, are we going to get the 3/4 vote, or are we not going to get that 3/4 vote? And the jail roof, the driveway replacements, those are all tied to this jail project too. Those projects are going to be moved back a year also. But facilities wants to know, are you guys doing the jail or are you not doing the jail? The sheriff wants to know so that, he has some level of comfort that, okay, it's going to happen now. They've approved the money. I know it's in 28, but they've approved the money now. I know this project's going to happen. So it's a reassurance value for the staff that I think option B provides that's beneficial.
All right, one more time. Any other questions or comments? If not, we will move on. That's all you had, right?
That's it. I'm done.
Your voice is wearing out, I was gonna mention that, so it's good. Announcements, any announcements? Any announcements? Next week, the fair starts, so you might want to capitalize on the invitations you've received to go and spend some time there. Date of our next meeting, October 8th, 2026, correct? All right, I want to thank you all. Thank you all for your patience. Thank you all for your comments. It's good to be totally engaged, and Supervisor McIntosh
Can I
has
request a-
one last,
Can I request a future agenda item?
we don't have future agenda items on here.
Request for future agenda items?
Oh, way up there.
Sorry.
I thought I could skip over. All right.
If we could do a joint meeting between HHS and CJCC or Public Service, whoever's the best committee there, to learn more about Chapter 51, that would be great.
Okay. You have that down? All right. That will be taken care of. Any other, I think I asked this before, any other questions or comments? If not, it is 11:26, and I'm going to declare the meeting adjourned.